Worlds. You can explain the moments, you know the stories, you remember the champions. But can you describe what makes Worlds Worlds? It's a recipe, a combination of feelings and energy, and the coming together of a community to crown the best of the best. Worlds is much easier to understand when you consider the formula, the pillars of the SMITE World Championship. Pillar 1, the underdogs, the unlikely. It's the story that seems too good to be true, but the world needs the chance to believe that anybody can win, because they can.
It's gonna be done! SK Gaming! This is all about sanguine! Latam! They're going to DreamHack! They booked a place! And damn well deserve it!
All's better! All's better! I don't care who you are!
They're
on the
everywhere.
planet, all's better! The Pittsburgh Knights have killed 4-0, down nearly 10,000 goals!
No lead is too big! No chasm is too wide!
Where our stories have had their underdogs, they've also had their Goliaths. The second pillar, the favorites, the team that's circled on everyone's calendar, and it's the squad that bears the weight of the hammer itself.
At the DSI and rivals, they need minions, but that should be got it! Watching their ticket to finals on the 3-0!
Someone's got to stop adapting in the backline. He's going to kill everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, Excellent Esports!
Final K ults away from all the CC. Will he stay alive under the damage? Final K turning it around. Are you kidding me? He stays alive. Sam's here as well. What a collapse. Ghost Gaming get two.
I've seen enough. I've seen it. I don't want to see anymore.
While we root for the teams, it is undeniable that the SMITE World Championship turns the eyes of the community towards the individual moments and plays and personalities. Pillar number 3, the playmakers, the MVPs. And when the lights shine their brightest and the pressure is at its heaviest, the playmakers must allow the energy of the moment to fuel them.
Jarcorrr still standing.
Finally! No, he didn't die!
He's still alive. He's in the Darmic pillars. He might not die. Jarcorrr!
Oh my God!
lives. Jarcorrr lives. He stays alive in the solo lane. It is bad to worse. It is ridiculous. The Leviathans are rolling. SOT. The chainsaw revving up as Final K jumped on. Here comes the Osiris. Triple kill for Sun.
Oh, man.
Takes the fourth away. The Scarabs will not be denied. Give him the quad, baby. Set him up. Knock him down. Sat's got 4.
These are the pillars of worlds. They cannot be read or explained or told. No, they must be experienced. But for the past 2 years, we've missed the physical presence of families and friends and fans. We've yearned for the type of energy that alters the room and changes lives. No more. It is time, once again, to raise the final pillar, the crowd, and live the electricity that is the SMITE World Championship.
Say it 3 times for the 3-time Vamos, 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 Leviathan!
Pittsburgh Knights, lightning strikes twice! Splice are going to be your season 5 world champions!
Long live the king! Excellent Esports! Titan downfall 3!
Gods and goddesses, welcome to the SMITE World Championships. A year filled with drama, plays, moments, and fierce competition now comes to a head. It's time to introduce your final 8 teams vying for the crown of World Champion. Introducing first, your Season 8 winners and defending world champions, the Atlantis Leviathans. built around a core of champions hoping to rise to the occasion. Your spring Masters champions, the Tartarus Titans. Next to the stage, the European powerhouses that all the teams fear. And not just because of Deathwalker's suit. It's Hex Mambo! A roster built on consistency and chemistry, winners and hopefuls. Welcome to the stage, the Oni Warriors. World champions, MVPs, mechanical masterminds hoping to capture lightning in a bottle. Please welcome to the stage the Olympus Bolts. The Cinderella story in all its glory. The king is back, and he's brought the Pentakid with him. It's the Highland Ravens. Royalty of the regular season, calm and calculated, your Camelot Kings! Your SMITE Summer Masters champions. A high-speed powerhouse and fan favorite, the Jade Dragons. now, join me in welcoming our stage host for the weekend, Kelly Link.
Welcome, SMITE fans, to the Season 9 SMITE World Championships. I am your host, Kelly Link, but you might remember me as hi-rez Kelly. It is an absolute pleasure and honor that after 10 long years, I still get to be a part of the game that means so much to me. So thank you all for welcoming me back, but more importantly, thank you guys for being here, because this wouldn't have happened if it weren't for all of you. Over the next 3 days, you will watch the 8 best teams in the world fight in the battleground of the gods, but only one will claim their spot at the top and walk away with this trophy. Are you guys ready? So am I, so let's head to the desk with the one and only Gormizer.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And again, welcome everyone, whether you're in venue or watching live on Twitch, on YouTube, wherever you happen to be, for tuning in to the Season 9 SMITE World Championship here live in Arlington, Texas. And I don't know about y'all two, I'm feeling pretty excited about it. It's wild to be back here and hearing fans just feels absolutely insane to me. I got Trelly, I've got Hazer here on the desk. Yeah, give it up. They deserve some cheers.
I'm humbled.
Yeah, we're going to be talking a lot about some fun games, I think, that we're about to see throughout today. I mean, the quarterfinals already seem pretty stacked. But before we get into that, I do have to say that it's not necessarily a Season 9 without thanking our title sponsor, Prime Gaming, right? Being able to go out there, use a sub on any Twitch channel that you happen to really love, things like that. There's a lot of good skins, I've heard, that are in the game right now that you can get to represent your favorite teams. So, of course, thank you to Prime Gaming and all of that. The biggest thing, I think, though, that we're going to be looking at today, quarterfinals.
Yeah.
Right? 8 teams, 4 of them are done by the time we close out today. And we don't know fully. You know, normally, at least for us, and Trelly, you can tell me if you feel the same way, you come into the event, you've got like an inkling, right? You know a little bit of what's going to happen. But as we look at this bracket, I have no idea what's going to happen.
I believe convincingly that there are 6 or 7 teams that could easily make a World's final run, right? I mean, this is a totally competitive quarterfinals. Anything can happen. Upsets happen every single year. And you're right. You've got an inkling, you've got a suspicion, but no one knows what's going to happen. And
Hazer, I mean, specifically bringing you in, we got a lot of EU at the first half of the day.
Oh, yeah. I love to see it. Love to see the EU guys getting in here. And, you know, you've got inklings, but when was the last time our inklings about Worlds were correct? I feel like it's been shock after shock after shock after shock since about Season 3. So, yeah, excited to see how the quarters goes.
And, you know, speaking of, like, shock, right? This is going to harp a little on your accent. I'm going to apologize immediately, but it almost sounds like chalk.
Oh, no.
Trelly and I were having a conversation yesterday specifically about this Highland Ravens team and their weird propensity, although I think the Titans lately, Susano's been throwing it out there as well. Yeah. There's been a weird propensity for some chalk lately. I'm kind of hoping that we don't see it, but we'll figure that one out. That's going to be throughout the weekend. Again, just being able to look at what is going to be happening. Long weekend ahead of us, but let's look at today, specifically what is going to be shaking out. You've already seen the opening ceremonies. We're in the pre-match show, which means coming up very soon is SWC quarterfinal number 1. That's going to be your Kings taking on the Ravens. After that's the Year 10 keynote. Then we'll get into the rest of the quarterfinals, halftime show, and intermission, and then the post-game show to close out the day. Figure out who's going forward to the semifinals. Over the next couple of days, we'll also be having not just the red carpet, but the DKO Creator Cups, as well as the Golden Bolts. We'll have a Year 10 first look. A lot of stuff happening right before the finals on Sunday. So a lot of things very, very electric and exciting to watch. Of course, I'm most excited for the games, but we're going to see a lot of I'm actually maybe more excited for the cosplay contest. I don't know. It's hard to choose. It's so difficult. Whenever they put something like this in front of me, it's so difficult to choose just one. So I will just focus in on the games, and we have to look at it. We're going to go a little bit backwards here.
Right.
Go to the end of the day, right? We're going to be looking first at a matchup that I absolutely floored, by the way, that this still happened. By choice of the Leviathans, Hazer, we are starting off talking about a World's Finals rematch with the Titans taking on the Leviathans.
Yeah, amazing that they decided to pick the Titans. Probably what many consider the strongest SPL team in this event, in the group stage event, I should say. And they get picked second by the Levi's. The Levi's obviously feel like they've identified a weakness there that they can exploit. I'm excited to see what they do in the drafts. I think that's really going to be where we see why they chose the Titans.
And Trelly, I think a lot of that, if you want to identify quote-unquote weak points, right, if you're looking somewhere, you look into the jungle. On one side, you've got Panatom. Last year, in the argument, a lot of people are saying this guy should have gotten MVP, and it's a really difficult toss-up considering the performance that they had on their run. I mean, just absolutely smacking the Titans in the finals, a 3-0, which we hadn't seen for years and years and years since NRG, I believe, had taken out Enemy. Maybe they were Epsilon at the time, whatever their name was. It'd been since Season 2, right? So a long, long time, or Season 3. And so now you're getting into this point where you're looking at someone who's had a huge performance last year versus Susano, who it's been a little while, Trelly, since we've gotten to see him on a big stage like this in this performance. He's only been with him a little over a month.
I'm hoping that Susano gets a bit of a world stage buff, because we were talking about him a bit in waiting room. I know that Susano can play up to this level. Everyone knows it, but his god pool is coming into question. After the Naja gets banned, where does he go? The Nemesis? Sometimes, but I'm hoping and thinking that, there's been some workshopping, some practicing, and I imagine we were talking about the chalk. I'm hoping that doesn't come out. Maybe that's what the Levi's were looking at, though. Like, maybe we can exploit something in the jungle, and if the Tartarus Titans come out swinging, they might make them regret it.
I'm excited. Again, just being able to watch what those two are going to do. It could go all three. It could be a 2-0, and it could go either way. That one, again, it's impossible to predict, and I think that's going to be the case for a lot of these. Right before we jump to that one, though, we will be watching the Dragons take on the Warriors. Now, watching these teams, especially as of late, we got to see the Warriors just last week. It took them a little while to get here, maybe a closer call than they would have liked. But on the other side, and again, Trelly, it's been a while since we've seen the Dragons. Do you think that that's affected them at all?
I mean, I imagine getting to sit at home and watch is good and bad in some cases, right? Because coming into this tournament hot off of a win streak would feel nice, like Hex Mambo's doing, for example. But the Dragons had a lot of time to sit back and sort of work on their game plan. So I'm hoping that's what happened. They are a team that loves to come out swinging. They love to play in the early. And with that kind of early aggression, it can be intimidating, right? Especially for a team like the Oni Warriors, who you said kind of limped across the finish line on their way to this tournament. They were fine with it. We did talk to Nika, and he said, hey, we got here, and now we're ready. That was the time where we slip. We're not going to slip up on the world stage.
And Hazer, very specifically, we saw some highlights there, but the Dragons are coming in with a true rookie, right? First year in the SPL for Pagon. You would not believe it if you are watching him play. But to go up against someone like Dardas, I mean, that is going to be a very crucial matchup.
Yeah, I mean, it's a crazy matchup in mid. They've got very diverse god pools. Dardas very much avoiding the meta, and Pagon kind of setting the meta in the mid lane with Set, pardon the pun. But he plays many of these unusual assassins. He can whip out the Toth. He's got so many sort of signature picks, and it's the same for Dardas. Will we see Hera? Will we see Afro? I don't know, but I'm excited to find out.
Bad news for you. You're going to have to wait a little while for it. That's match 3, unfortunately for you, but we'll get to see it. Before that is maybe the one, look, I've heard the most rumblings about this. I've been talking about it a lot. I know that we've all been talking about it a lot. I've heard it from people who are watching. Match number 2 of the day. The Olympus Bolts taking on Hex Mambo. This one is maybe the highest contended because you don't know what to expect out of him. I mean, Hex Mambo, very recently, Hazer, having an explosive run, right? I mean, you're coming into this, if you're just assuming Worlds, you're expecting all 8 SPL teams to have shown up. For Hex Mambo to show up the way that they did, not only through their regular season, but then in their championship, and then in the group stages. I mean, this is a team that, if you're talking about crowd buff, this is the team that's going to play with it.
Absolutely, and them all being together, they're all being here. Johnny on LAN, I've been excited to see it for years, and we're finally getting the chance. Hex Mambo probably coming into this one as favorites against the Bolts, which is incredibly hard to believe going into this tournament.
It feels weird to say that. I don't think I'm going to. It feels so weird. I know we got a lot of Bolts fans behind us as well.
Oh, yeah.
So we might need like security around Hazer after this. He just said that out loud. Look, I don't know. But the Bolts, Trelly, we've got to talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
You go into, phase 2, and rewinding the clock a little bit. They're on a pretty impressive streak.
Yeah.
They're doing well, and going into the Summer Masters, maybe not the performance they would have liked. I think the first time that they lost to the Warriors on LAN happens that event. Feels a little awkward for them. and then they lose Haddix.
Yeah.
They bring in Baskin. Baskin's a fantastic player, but it takes a little while. And in phase 3, they didn't look too great. They come in as the 4th seed, you know, being able to kind of claw their way up from 6th in the playoffs. What are we expecting out of the Bolts today?
Well, I'm thinking, you know, if they take being able to claw their way here in the top 4, not actually go to group stages, that could be the rise of the Bolts in their mind, right? It is a difficult matchup because X-Mambo has been looking real clean. They've been looking real solid, but I still think if playing through the jungle, if Lasper has a pop-off early game, then I think they could be just fine. The Bolts are a team that they can overcome anything.
And you know what? I expected. I mean, you're talking about them. They weren't even first seed. Like when Barra won his Worlds, they were unfavored up against Cog Red at the time. So underdog kind of fits them pretty well in certain circumstances. That one, though, is at match 2. Maybe the most exciting one of the day, but we're going to be kicking it off. Match number 1, the Camelot Kings taking on the Highland Ravens. You've got a nice EU matchup here. Hazer, Adapting's back, man. He's on land. It just feels right.
It feels so right. I don't think anybody would have predicted the Highland Ravens qualifying into this event. They came in 2nd seed in EU.
Never would have seen it.
Considered by many to be the weaker region, and oh my goodness, did they deliver. Adapting's back, and he's here to stay.
You can call him out, by the way. Mifflin said it. He had to apologize on broadcast because he was going on and on. And you know what? We get 2 SCC teams here, and they both happen to be from Europe. They're playing one kind of game, and it must be the right kind of game because they have proven time and time again to be able to upset things. The problem is, Chelly, they are going up against the number 1 seed from the SBL, from the playoffs. Now, there's first seed curse conversations you might throw out there, but it's the Camelot Kings that are on the other side. That one feels like it's going to be difficult. You know, the jungle matchup in this one feels like it is going to be the most important one, right? Adapting, going up against Twig, the impact they can both have. Very different styles of play at times, but very similar sometimes as well. Depends. Just everything on what we see out of them today.
I mean, what year are we in that Adapting and CaptainTwig are duking it out? But I think you're right. The Highland Ravens have a very steep climb ahead of them because the Camelot Kings play a very, very calculated brand of Smite. They don't take unnecessary risks. They take fights they know they can win, and more specifically, their farm game is extremely difficult to try and upset. But there's a reason the Highland Ravens are here. We saw their faces on stage. They looked extremely confident as well. I like to think duo lane could be something to be exploited here. I think VaporishCoast has had a fantastic performance. They definitely have some tools, no doubt.
There's a lot, I think, on both squads to be able to look at. And like you said, I mean, if you're talking any underdog matchup, this has to be the biggest one, right? I mean, number 1 seed from the SPL, the way they looked after picking up Jarcorrr as well, Twig called it a slump, and they got 3rd seed, and they're going in against the best players in the world. That still floors me to this day that he said that. And it's just because of how good this team, how high level they can get, how high their ceiling is in Hazer. It feels like this is where, you know, as Trelly is saying, you're going to need all those small pieces. You're going to need Coast. You're going to need Adapting. You're going to need everyone on the Ravens to step up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the duo lane is a good place to highlight as well. Coast has kind of been running games against everybody, but now Genetics and Jarcorrr, 2 of the best players in the league this year, it's a different beast. I think that's going to be a great place to focus in and see how Coast can perform under the pressure. He loves solo kills. He was saying to me earlier on, 2-0 to them. He's feeling confident.
If he's calling it 2-0 already, feeling really good about that one. Real fast, I want to know, and this is going to be an impossible question, which matchup to either of you is like the most exciting for you today? And Charlie, who are you feeling? Which one's got you the most amped?
Mambo Bolts is going to be the most exciting for me.
I'm excited for Twig versus Adapting this upcoming set. I love it.
I've got great news for both of you. That's before the halftime show. We're going to be getting into those. In fact, we're going to kick into match number 1. Again, the Kings taking on the Ravens. We're going to go to a quick break, so use your time wisely. And when we get back, we've got match number 1.
It is time for the first quarterfinals. Welcome back to the stage, the Camelot Kings. It is time to make some noise for their opponents, the Highland Ravens.
underdogs taking on the first seed, the Kings, appropriately named for this exact moment, #1 seed coming into the event. And we just got to touch on this a little bit in the pre-show because this is one of maybe the honestly should be theoretically one-sided. And then you start looking at the matchups and all of a sudden nothing feels certain anymore, right? You start looking at players, you start looking at the performance that the Ravens have had. Start adding in that EU flair, Hazer, and all of a sudden, this matchup gets closer and closer every time I think about it.
Absolutely. I mean, if you watch the Highland Ravens at the EU playoffs before going into the SWC group stage, they were a completely different team. They've grown so much in that time. I think they must have scrimmed Mambo a lot and learned a lot, and now they're looking so strong. So the Kings, they're in for a match.
And the Kings, Trelly, so we're going to talk about right now, and you've got to look. It's so difficult sometimes to choose any player. This team plays so strong as a 5 unit. And that's the thing that really has kind of floored it. You go back, you watch any of their games, they're losing in kills. They're down 0-5, yet they still got a 3K gold lead. They're just playing the map better than you. And a lot of the slump, let's call it, as Twig had said, gets changed when they pick somebody up. They grab Jarcorrr, last year's World's MVP, and they pick him up to come play as their carry. And first time he plays carry, Trelly, he makes it a goal to solo everybody else in the league and does it. Second time around, they immediately get first place on the Phase 3 playoffs. It feels like he's brought a different element to the Kings.
Yeah, there's something about the way that Jarcorrr plays the duo lane that makes him so exciting to watch. As you said, aggression. Not every ADC in the current meta is looking for 1v1s. Not every ADC is stepping up to your tower line, trying to stuff in every single wave and look for solo kills. It's just not what's happening. Usually it's, hey, I'm going to camp underneath my tower, see you at level 20. Jarcorr's not waiting, and he's going to bring the fight too, no matter the matchup, no matter what god he's playing. He wants to get aggressive, and I think the Camelot Kings play style facilitates that so well.
And it's going to be fun to watch just because, like you said, it really does play into itself. The Kings specifically making things look so just clean, Hazer. I mean, all the time. And you know, you're really enabled by the players around you. If you're looking at Jarcorrr, genetics is giving you a ton of room to work with, especially considering, and I think I was talking to you a little bit about it yesterday, Trelly mentioning it, but like Yamoja being maybe something that should be on the rise for the tournament. If you're throwing them anything like that for a duo lane, you know you're going to be feeling really good. And I know you hear the cheers out there, and it's because one guy is standing up on the stage, and it's the other one who's going to be providing the setup, right? It is CaptainTwig. He's been to every World Championship. And without further ado, let's go see what he has to say with Kelly.
Thank you so much, Gormizer. Twig, what is it like to be back in this audience live with all of your fans?
Feels amazing. Best moment in 3 years.
Without a doubt. So obviously coming out of the SPL as the first seed, you had the option to choose the first team that you went up against in the quarterfinals here. Why did you choose the Ravens?
Well, first thing I remember cheering for Adapting when he was qualifying, and I'd love to play against him again. But obviously, they do seem to be the biggest underdog in the whole tournament, so it'd be kind of dumb not to pick them.
I love it. I love it so much. Obviously, Jarcorrr is one of the newer players that you have on your team right now, and he was the MVP last year. How do you feel he is meshing with your team?
Absolutely fantastic. The guy is a stone cold killer, so it's amazing to be the biggest tournament for years with him.
And obviously, Twig, you have made it to Worlds every single year, but you have been so close, but yet to grab that title. Why is this year going to be different?
I think it's because of the boys, honestly. I think we're the best if we play our game. I think we have quality players everywhere. And if we just play our game, I don't think it should be close.
I love it. Thank you so much, Twig. Guys, make some noise for him. You can head back down, and we're heading back to the desk.
It's the boys. You hear from him first, and honestly, it makes sense, right? I think even just talented is maybe even an understatement when you're covering every single one of those players. I'm excited to see what the Kings have to offer us for this tournament, just because there's a reason they came in as the #1 seed. The other team, though, they're going to be going up against underdog, as Twig puts it, as we've said it. The Highland Ravens, your second seed from Europe, always falling short. You watch the last couple of phases. If they're taking a loss, it's only to Hex Mambo, who we're going to see a little bit later today. You go back and you watch their championship, and honestly, that last set, their qualifying set to the group stage, is a little shaky to get through. But Hazer, they make it there. They eliminate the Valkyries. They keep themselves alive in the tournament. They take the Hounds out of contention, knock NA away, and now have clawed their way back here again with a player like Coast, who's going to be matching up against Jarcorrr, with adapting out of the jungle, with everybody else that we haven't mentioned, me Angry as well, one of the mid laners. Like, everyone on this team feels like they have something that, as in Twig's word, if they play their game, it could provide a very, very exciting show.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I absolutely love to see from them in the qualifiers is how they dealt with the pressure. They used the pressure against the Eldritch Hounds, especially in that game too. They took it slow. They played that EU playstyle, which NA loves so much. And they took it slow and they waited for mistakes. So they showed experience, and hopefully they can keep that up in this event as well.
And again, you can see all of them sitting down, getting ready, kind of getting into that mindset. But this is a team, I think, that just brings, in my mind, another level to what they've been doing lately. I think that the Ravens we saw middle of December that qualifies to the group stages and the Ravens that we saw last week feel like two different Ravens. They definitely put their nose to the grindstone, leveled up. You have a leadership in adapting, but you also have leadership. It's easy to talk about Coast, even though some people might look over the experience. He's been on LAN before. He's been in huge tournaments. He's played and had some of the biggest moments. I mean, he pinted Mifflin on LAN, and we had to mention it. It's actually in the contract whenever Coast is being discussed. And because of that, I think Coast is going to be a huge player here, Charlie.
Yeah, no doubt. And we did get to speak to Coast about the switch up here for support, having Cozyx in this lane as opposed to iSilence later on in the tournament.
Yeah.
Cozyx has made his laning so different, right? He said that he can play so much more aggressive. He's opened up the way that he takes fights, that sort of thing. And having a support in your corner like that really can make all the difference, because we know how much genetics makes a difference for the Camelot Kings.
Yeah.
You need that kind of brain in your corner. Just listening to the way that the Ravens have been praising Cozyx makes you think, hey, maybe the duo lane is cooking up something, right? Maybe Coast is going to be able to hard carry some of these games away, despite going against one of the scariest looking duo lanes in the entire league with Jarcorrr and genetics. I think the Ravens, there's a reason they're feeling that confident.
But Hazer, there's something, a theme I'm noticing throughout every single one of those videos, and that's, you see not only the team around them, adapting almost always leading the way. Again, you're talking veteranship. I think Coast is bringing some of it, but adapting. Two-time world champion, Season 2, Season 3, first one to do it back-to-back. Only jungler who has done it back-to-back. It's almost impossible to talk about this team without talking about him.
Yeah, he's just so cool, calm, and collected. And he's so good at the game. Why can't I be that good? I don't know. If he gets his Thor, you've got to worry about that. But he's just good at everything. He just got all phases of the game, early, mid, late. He shot calls. He does it all for his team. And he's just so impressive. His length of service in the league and in the scene has been incredible. He's back, and I don't want to see him go away again.
I mean, there are junglers playing in this tournament right now that said adapting was the reason they got into the game. I'm sure it's got to feel great to be one of the greats, and of course to be back on the world stage. We'll find out from him himself as we go down to Kelly with an interview.
Thank you so much, Gormizer. Joining me here, adapting the two-time, and this is the first time that everyone else on your team is in a live audience situation. How are the tournament jitters going for everyone else?
Oh, I think everyone's so excited. Everyone's super, super pumped to be playing in front of a crowd for the first time. An amazing crowd like here, and yeah, everyone's super excited.
Now, obviously, the Kings chose you guys first out of the SPL seeding. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I can kind of understand, you know, we're a bit underestimated coming into this, so I hope we're going to prove them wrong.
Now, obviously, you're the two-time, but I watched those qualifiers, and you flashed up that 3. What have you been doing to prepare to become the 3-time champ?
Just normal prep, just doing our thing. I just think that my team has what it takes to go all the way, so let's see.
I love it. I love the confidence, guys. Give it up for adapting. You can head back to your seat. And everyone, I believe it's time for picks and bans, so let's head to the desk.
That's right. All we need for adapting to sit down once they get in the lobby, once they're ready to go. Oh, picks and bans get to kick off. And again, after last week, things feel really exciting. I mean, last week you kind of get the mix, right? And specifically, if you go back, and I'm going to stretch your brains if you have to scratch them for a little bit, I understand. All the way back to Phase 3 playoffs. Been a little while. But a lot of has not necessarily shifted super much since then, but we've still seen some different gods. I think Ishtar was on the rise, still pretty heavily picked back then, and Hazer still very heavily prioritized. We saw a shift, Yemojas suddenly not being as highly prioritized. Do you expect some of this to go back towards some of the older meta, getting some of those gods back in there, especially for like genetics, or do you think that we're going to continue seeing this kind of new fleshed out picks?
I think when you talk about Yemojas, there are Yemojas and there are Yemojas, right? We've got genetics, we've got wrong you. Those are the first kind of Yemojas. Those are the ones you want to see. The second kind, not so strong. It's kind of their signature pick, so I think we're likely to still see the Yemoja being played by the very best.
I'm excited to see it, and actually it's wild. I'm looking at the Phase 3 playoffs. I don't think they got it once or locked it in once. A lot of Vulcan that tournament, though, if that means anything to you. And that's actually another big kind of matchup here, Trelly. This mid lane, some of the explosive play we've seen. We were talking about Pagon a little bit earlier, but we've still seen some assassins out of mid. It feels like this is one where those big, high level, like I'm going to steal the objective, I'm going to confirm the objective, like those plays, those gods maybe are going to take a little bit of priority.
Could be. I think the way that both these teams play, you were right to highlight dual lane is certainly going to be something that's important. I'm curious if the Highland Ravens did their homework in the sense of the group stages had a very different god pool as opposed to what the SPL usually sees. And in this case, they are going to try and target out CaptainTwig almost immediately.
Yeah, the Ravens and picks and bans for game number 1 are your first pick team. And of course, like you said, the first thing they do immediately, they take care of the Najah, try to stifle Twig a little bit. But that actually brings up a different point. I'm wondering what their third ban is going to be. They go for the Hades as well. But Hazer, Lancelot has actually been pretty high up on the list for the Kings lately.
And there it goes. It's gone. You call it, and he's out of there. Very, very strong pick for Twig. It's one of the ones he was sort of experimenting for a while when they were in that so-called slump. And I think Twig wasn't playing well, but Lance was the one that he went to and played really well on. So I think astute banning by the Ravens.
And maybe astute banning by the Kings as well, right?
Wow.
Baba Yaga is something that you're only going to be seeing from the Ravens. Maybe a little bit of Mambo. You get the Maui. But the Thor ban away from adapting, we've seen what he can do on a big stage with this god. That just feels right in my opinion. But they lock in Set and Trelly. That surprises you as a first pick.
I was expecting that pick right there, and it looks like the Camelot Kings, they know exactly what they want. Why not grab the Ishtar and the Cernunnos? Double Hunter composition, you get plenty of prod shred. Sure, you're giving up Set, but you get the 2 best ADCs in the game, bar none, to start off your top 2. That's going to be intimidating. I wouldn't be surprised if you have the option to go to the Fafnir to facilitate those 2, but not really Genetics' style. He likes to go more towards the safety picks. He likes, the Ymirs, the Yemojas, even the Khepri comes to mind. But he really gets to his pick of the litter. He can go wherever he wants here.
On a pick, I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting to see until either the Bolts played, because Bear loved it in Phase 3 playoffs, or until the Dragons played. Danzaburou gets locked in as a matchup.
There it is.
And Hazer, if you're looking at it, you've got a Khepri now on one side, an Ishtar, you've got a Cernunnos. Does the Danza Ymir feel like it can hold up to the duo lane?
I think it should do okay. Yeah, they might lose a little bit of pressure up against this Khepri Ishtar. Probably just going to play a little bit passive. Whether that Ishtar is going ADC or mid, we're not really sure yet, I guess.
Yeah.
But an interesting setup here. I think this Set in the mid as well. Not something we've seen out of BigManTingz all that much, but he's clearly practiced it over the break, picked this one up. I can't see this going jungle for Twig. I think we will see this in the mid lane.
I'm really curious to see where they will shimmy their picks. An awful lot of quiet around the solo lane, which is wild to me because Cxnnahh has been phenomenal in Europe. I mean, you're talking about a huge high-pressure player. A variety on the other side as well. Someone I'm kind of surprised it took me this long to bring his name up, considering some of the highlight plays that we've had from him in the past, some of the plays that he has made on the world stage in finals as well. I think variety, well, it's the spice of life for a reason. I think this guy's going to be able to bring it. He's going to do a lot of work for us. Bans, as we catch up with the second phase, Al Kwong definitely doing a lot of homework on the Ravens over the last week for the Kings. They also get rid of the Amaterasu. On the other side, the Daji and the Nemesis banned away, trying to once again stifle. I mean, that's 4 bans that are targeted specifically at dealing with Twig. And Trelly, in some ways, that's a confidence booster. In some ways, you're now cursing because all of your gods are getting taken away.
Yeah, I think the Nemesis ban was genius because there's a lot of prod shred, or magical damage needed. And it looks like the King said, go ahead, ban the Nemesis. You know what, Twig plays a whole lot, and it's this Evo out of the jungle. Haven't seen it in a bit, but we always know he's got it in the back pocket. That's going to bring a ton of burst damage as well as ease of farm in the early. You can get that carpet online and really just start running back and forth. I am curious, as you said, what variety would go in the solo lane to try and deal with this. I think the Bologna is a pick that he likes a lot, but the Jormungandr locked in, and the crowd's loving that.
I'm floored. I mean, admittedly, we saw a little bit of this in Europe. It was the only time they're locking it in. They add in the Susano, which hi-rez makes me feel like this set's going mid. Susano's going to be locked in alongside it. Like, that's a lot of pressure, a lot of dive potential that the Ravens are bringing.
Absolutely. The Susano for adapting, a little bit iconic as well. Jorm, knock-up immunity for the Hebo. We have seen this Hebo do so well for Johnny in the jungle. Can Twig will follow it up. One of the best duel players in the world. You know he has the Hebo in the back pocket. We'll see how he performs on it. Last pick coming through here now for the Kings.
Yeah, anytime, if you're wondering, if you want to watch a duel stream, it's going to be Twig, right? I mean, if he's streaming, you know exactly what he's going to be playing, you know where he's going to be practicing. And he's showcased several times that 1v1 potential that he has is insane. Kern, Ishtar, Khepri, the Habwa, Hebo, whatever you want to call it, trying to find their final pick, presumably for variety here to take up against the Jormungandr Trelli. As a matchup, Jorm is not necessarily known as someone who you have to beat. It's more about what you do after the fact. They go for the Mulan. How do you feel about it?
It's one of those things where I think you have to try and match Jorm's rotations, right? He's going to be able to use that World Serpent to get entirely across the map, and there's no way that Mulan can keep up with that. However, Mulan is a lane bully. I mean, you can use that grapple to just stun him out of his bellow. That's his main clear tool unless you're maxing the one. It's going to get very annoying in that lane matchup, and you got to know, even if you channel that World Serpent, crushing waves on the way. If you're even a little bit low in that lane, CaptainTwig has some gank opportunities. So I'm thinking either A, adapting is going to be babysitting that lane, or B, ignoring it entirely and saying, hey, you're in trouble regardless. I'm going to go help out Duo, which I think could be a better win condition later on.
Honestly, yeah, it opens up a lot. Plus, I mean, it's Jorm, right?
Yeah.
Does he really need the help? He's got his ult, he's big,
huge.
he's knock-up immune. He can just hang out for a while. Just don't die, you'll do fine. It's really exciting to see what these are going to do. Still blown away. Jormungandr in game number 1 of the World Championship, something I did not expect to see. Hey, there's something I was asking for, actually, and people can call it, the Ymir. I'm really excited. The walls, we've seen what this pick can do to transform a game.
Yeah, really, really powerful. That one did get a slight nerf on the duration and on the cooldown, but it's still just absolutely incredible. Late game tool in the jungle. You can trap people off, you can pick them off, and that's what they'll be looking for.
Well, we've got all 10 picks. We've got all the gods. We've got all the players. So it's time for game number 1 of the SMITE World Championship here in Season 9. And who better to do it than Dave and Mifflin?
What do you say, Miff? It's finally time to kick it off. It's a SMITE World Championship. Did I shake you up a bit?
Look, give me a second, all right? I'm still
You're not
taking in
into
the
it
crowd.
yet?
I'm still trying to figure it out, man.
I know. We'll work into it, Miff. It is finally time, though. But it's the lopsided matchup. It's the Camelot Kings up against the Highland Ravens. Weird things can happen in best of 3s. Do you think the Ravens have a shot here to build some momentum in game 1?
Look, I think they can, and I love the composition that they've built for themselves already to do it. But this is the first seed out of the SPL. The Camelot Kings picked them for a reason, and the Kings seem to be coming out with pressure. This is a departure from their standard. I think this is going to be a statement game 1.
And what do you think, though? I mean, it's also a very Kings style of draft, right? They get double ADC. This team loves to control objectives.
True.
But then a Hebo out of left field, I'm not expecting that from the Camelot Kings. It seems like a team not afraid, throwing a bit of something extra in the mix here, maybe catch the Ravens off guard.
I really love this Hebo pick as well. I mean, it's something we had seen from Johnny a little bit earlier on during the qualifiers. It's high pressure. Surprisingly, when you think about Hebo, it's, oh yeah, we'll get to level 20, and then I'm going to one-shot. Clearly, you can do it early on here. I'm excited. I think the Camelot Kings can really make a statement early on. I'm keeping my eyes in particular on Jarcorrr. Lining up against the Pentakid.
The Pentakid against you, Miff. That's right. But he's gotten Penta since then. It's okay.
Okay.
Let's kick it off. Game number 1 between the Highland Ravens and the Camelot Kings. And I think there's so much to look at here in this matchup. And of course, you're looking at adapting. You're looking at CaptainTwig. We talk so often about how jungle sets the pace and how important those ebbs and flows are. Adapting, Susano. I don't know if he's going to get the Thor at all here this weekend. Do you think he can make a statement here in game one?
I think so. He's got some pretty decent matchups. The ability to stick to Hebo in particular can really make it difficult for Twig to start maneuvering the map.
Yep.
If Susano pulls ahead early, expect this Hebo to stay behind. But you don't play through him in the early, you're playing through Angry.
You know what? I appreciate the crowd. We're breathing new life into the purple buff fights here at level 1, something we've seen all year long. And suddenly it just gets a bit more electric. And you know what? I think that speaks volumes to the confidence of Cozy here, because coming into this team as a support, but loses his beads to Genetics, the aggressive support player for the Camelot Kings. Early value, potential maybe for a rotation in.
Just such a low mobility Guardian at that. Cozy is now a gank target for the next couple of minutes, already getting some pressure on him as well.
We know how Genetics likes to play on this Khepri,
So
not relegated to being a defensive god. Yark, a perfect pairing for Genetics as well, and he'll get the Ishtar this game. I loved that pick for Yark, Miff. It's a pick for Yark, one of his best, but also a pseudo ban away from VaporishCoast. Hello, Twig, level 2 in the mid lane. Angry just a bit behind. And how about this mid lane 2v2?
The 2v2, you're really favoring the set, at least in the early portions. It's not a standard mage on the other side, though. BigManTingz on the Cern can bring a bit of that fight back. You have to be concerned about the CC combo. Bramble Blast Clipperl right into the knockup.
Now, Genetics has been obnoxious in the early goings of this lane. Repeated abductions onto Cozy. For now, the Ymir is fine. And I think that's a worthwhile conversation here, Miff. I mean, if you can withstand another minute and a half or so, you'll get those beads back, you'll be just fine. Not immune, though, to games where if Ymir is the target, that could be where the Kings want to funnel a lot of their early pressure. Twig adapting! Won't have the damage. Nearly did. And what a statement that would have been for the Highland Ravens.
Get used to seeing that. Twig is the target in this 2v2. You're not really looking to take out the Cern. Genetics keeping me on the edge of my seat here. Action all the way across the map. Twig really needs to figure out how he's going to farm up early. Look at the itemization. That's a book of thought. That's going to take a whole lot of time to stack up, especially out of the jungle.
Tings maybe in some danger here. Won't get pulled by adapting. Somewhat safe. Do you think that's the mindset, though, of just the Kings in general? You've got a double ADC composition. You got Book of Thoth out of the jungle. Need some time to spool up.
I mean, your scaling is decent into the mid game. The desk talked about it. Just run down objectives. The burn potential on Pyromancer and Goldfree both incredibly high. And confirmation also belongs to the Kings so long as Twig is there. Crushing Wave, nothing's beating that early.
Ooh, Cozy's got to dodge out. A little bit of pressure from Jarcorrr and Genetics. How about the solo lane matchup, though, Miff? Kata on the Jormungandr, did not expect it. Maybe at all this weekend, especially not in game number 1. Against Variety on Mulan, a pick that he has gone to in the past, a player who loves being aggressive in lane. Are you ceding pressure to the Mulan? Are you thinking the Kings might have an opportunity on right?
Man, Jorm is so deceptive in how he plays the lane. Has the ability to get aggressive. I'll be keeping my eyes on how he decides to build out. That second item, I think, very telling for how he's trying to strategize around the map. If it's all damage all the way, solo kills could go either way.
Sure.
Otherwise, once you tick over to level 5, the World Serpent becomes available. We talked about it for all of Season 7 and Season 8. Jormungandr,
so long
just
ago.
unkillable. I mean, how do you deal with that?
It's been in the meta in different ways, though. We've seen plenty of these slower built Guardians taking over the solo lane. I want to zoom out a bit, though, Miff, especially if we're going to be stacking up here for a moment. Keys to victory for the Highland Ravens in this set in general. Do you think it's the type of set where you need to catch the Kings off guard in this game? I'm not sure anyone is going to be winning 2 straight once you're down 0-1 in a best of 3. Do you think game 1 might be the most important for the Ravens?
You know what I think about game 1, Dave.
Game 1 is the most important game.
You want to set the pace, man. You want to set the pace. And the Highland Ravens in a best of 3, especially in a best of 3. Game 1 so important to put you on set point.
Now, I've liked Adapting's hovering towards mid here. Hasn't struck pay dirt just yet. In fact, BigManTingz hasn't had to go back, upgrade any of those items just yet. Could be a clashing here on right. Blue buff's going to respawn. Variety has CaptainTwig on this side of the map as well. Susano on a rotation in. Knockups followed up.
Should be okay.
But a well-timed ultimate from Variety keeps the CC immunity on the map. He actually goes back in. CaptainTwig hovering by as well. Looks like all will be fine over here on right. Early funneled pressure from the Ravens.
Such a smart play from Variety. Any other Mulan on the planet, instant cancels the ultimate, running into the tower. Variety holds on to it, continues the channel, makes sure that pull from adapting doesn't connect. That's the only way he survives. If he's pulled back in, you're done, especially after that dash from the third ability. Good stuff from Variety to hold on to his life here, but that's not what you draft Mulan for. You're not stalemating the lane, you're not trying to drag it out. Mulan is a pressure pick. You want to see her on the blue buffs, the back camps, roll that pressure through the map. As of now, Khannah's done a good job of slowing him down.
Miffin, I think it's a worthwhile conversation. I'm looking at Genetics. He's picked up Sovereignty here. Adapting, physical damage, Angry on the set mid, physical damage, Coast, of course. We know how the Danzaburou likes to play when it's in his hands. Does that leave Khannah up to most of the magical damage? You'll get a bit from the Ymir, I suppose. Are we getting full damage Jorm here? Do you need to see it from Khannah in game one?
I don't think I necessarily need to see it, but you definitely want a couple of damage items stacked up. The ability to have that burst potential, the stealth initiation onto these less mobile targets. If you catch CaptainTwig with a knockup, even if he has beads, even if he's got ultimate, you gotta wait till you land. You can't beads out of a knockup midair. So if Khannah can start the fight and finish it on his own, could be a good step forward for the Ravens.
Now, we have seen Greater Scorpion cause death a few times over the last few weeks. Won't happen here, though. The supports have now rotated out of the duo lane. And this is where Genetics can really make his money, right? We know how good he is in the 2v2, in the duo lane, but one of the best roaming supports in the league. And he can get it done on Khepri as well as most other Guardians.
More so a facilitator on this Khepri, though. Expect him to hang a little bit further back. It's not Genetics walking you down right into the back line. It's, I need to get that Scarab's Blessing out. I need to connect with these priority targets. Maybe CaptainTwig wants to play aggressively, get into their back line. Le Habois, post-crushing wave, he's got no way to peel for himself. That's why you've got the Khepri, that second lease on life.
Aggressive, a bit from adapting. We'll steal away some of the back camps from CaptainTwig. Early 1,000 gold lead here, Miff. Who are you calling victory for here in the first 10? We're dead even, a slight lead for the Highland Ravens. Have they done enough in the first 5, 6, 7 minutes of this game?
This early on, you're expecting pressure to go to the Highland Ravens, especially with that set out of mid, controlling neutral farm. Still pretty difficult for BigManTingz to fight back in with this Hunter.
Ooh. It's an ult on the Coast.
He's all right, he's all right, he's all right.
He'll rock it away. He'll be fine this time. So many times we've seen Danza or Cupid, some of those types of ults in the lane against the Ishtar. CC immunity just traded out one side or another and Coast. This time his aggression, though, may be a bit limited, especially if the Camelot Kings want to send some pressure over towards left, towards this Gold Fury, something like that in the next few minutes. Now, we haven't talked much about Angry yet here, Miff. Obviously, not playing with his team in arena, but on the set, is that giving you a glimpse of confidence for the Highland Ravens?
It's such a high execution pick, isn't it? If you're missing Skewer, that's all your burst. It's all auto attacks afterwards.
Adapting. He wants it. Wants the 1v1 water hands and adapting. Woo! Goes back in, but will back away again. So many times this game, we have been inches away from a first blood, but they have just escaped. And it feels like, Miff, adapting the one asking a lot of the questions early on this Susano.
The positioning from the entirety of the Highland Ravens has been highly aggressive inside the enemy jungle, on these back camps, chasing out Twig. It's a great target in the early, but if you spend all this time looking for these fights, things like what Genetics are doing the opposite side, taking away your offerings, will start to stack up slowly. The Camelot Kings have always been that counter-punch team. If you make mistakes, they'll make you pay for it. Then it might not hit you back, but they'll take your money.
Well, you have talked a bit about how CaptainTwig might need a bit more time to spool up here. Book of Thoth, Breastplate of Valor, a very popular second item. We already saw Sovereignty. We talked a bit about that for Genetics. Maybe some physical defense then makes some sense for CaptainTwig, especially if he feels like he's going to be under pressure from double assassin, Angry, adapting, jumping in. And Miff, we've seen a few glimpses of this over the year, double ADC into double assassin. Later on in the game, you're looking at, we'll call it an even team fight for now. Adapting, Angry, how easily are they going to find the backline?
The target selection going to be pretty difficult. It's a strong front line from the Camelot Kings as well. Variety can really stop some of that aggression, just walk in. Mulan's so safe. Just stop the blinks, and all of a sudden your backline's got a little bit more space to breathe. And even then, let's talk about what happens once you get into that backline. This is not a couple of carries that can't defend themselves.
Right.
It's Jarcorrr, it's BigManTingz, and Twig back there as well in the Hebo. They've got high CC between the three of them. They've got massive turnaround potential as well. And with Jarcorrr going down that crit tree, 20% chance you might just get lucky.
2v2 potentially over the red buff here is Angry, Cozy, walking towards the Camelot Kings side of the map. The freeze will go out in a wall as well, and some pressure building up on the BigManTingz, but you've got a Scarab's Blessing if need be. Genetics just behind the rest of his team. 4-man splitting the red buff. Highland Ravens better secure it. But this is where you get baited in. The Camelot Kings want you to walk towards their red buff because CaptainTwig is here, angry, has dashed away. A Typhoon just for disengage. It hits for now, but blink back in. The rocket off to the right. That'll save VaporishCoast's life. But the chase continues, Myth, as Cozyx gonna get rooted in place, knocked up, burned down. That's first blood to the Kings.
The Camelot Kings, they'll chase you to the ends of the earth. You got red buff, but at what cost? First blood and red in return. It's CaptainTwig with that flank play, cuts off all those escape paths. Cozyx plays incredibly well with his wall there, but can only stop 4. That knockup from Twig, the water carpet as well, buys time for Genetics to rotate back through and buys time for just this, maybe the first objective.
It's a 4-man split on red buff at that for the Highland Ravens, and you're gonna lose the Gold Fury, and you've lost your support as well. This is where the Camelot Kings have always set themselves apart from their opponents. Inch perfect, objective play, first Gold Fury, and it's a simple one, Myth. You kill off the support, you go back, grab the Gold Fury. Good news for the Ravens and their fans, if people are hoping for an upset here, is that Coast is feeling himself a bit. Won't have the ultimate to send towards Genetics. Tingz is low. I wonder if you think frustration's starting to creep in for the Highland Ravens here. The Camelot Kings have escaped with red HP now maybe 3, 4, 5 times in the first 11 minutes.
If the Ravens are frustrated, it's not showing in their gameplay. It's still clean.
Going to
the
Pyro.
Initiations on the map, the Pyromancer pull. Twig's nearby, but he's nearly oomed.
Doesn't have ult either, and it looks like a drop from the Highland Ravens. Would have gone a long way. Again, the good news for the Ravens, yes, Coast is playing aggressively, but also the Gold Fury and the dropped kill only equalize where we are as far as gold and really experience. VaporishCoast, about a half level ahead of Jarcorrr. That's what you want on this Danzaburou. Don't want it to be behind. You want to be able to rock it in, stay aggressive. This is the same play that bit the Highland Ravens just a moment ago, but there's not going to be a rotation back through from the Kings and a clean red buff steal.
I thought maybe we'd see the Kings moving towards Pyro, adapting.
No, he blinks away. Doesn't want the hands from BigManTingz. As the Cernunnos Smith has been able to scale up quite nicely, 2.5 items in mid.
That's a major loss on initiation from the Highland Ravens. The blink pull in from adapting could set up so much in these fights. Gotta hope, if you're a Highland Ravens fan, the Camelot Kings don't move in towards that Pyromancer. It would be pretty easy for them now to apply that burn, that secure from CaptainTwig as well. Keep your eyes on adapting. Largely mitigated in his efficacy for the next 2 minutes, but you can spend that time farming up, maybe even looking for some of the more immobile targets. CaptainTwig in particular still pretty susceptible.
Eyes have been on adapting all week long as returns to the world stage. What an arc for adapting. Retires, comes back, make it back to Worlds. They're going up against the Camelot Kings. The Highland Ravens back to the Pyromancer. It's only Variety here now, but again, it's dropped by the Highland Ravens. Variety looking for the stun, won't find it. Picked right back up by the Kings. This is a coin flip, or maybe the Typhoon makes the difference. Perfectly reset by the Kings. And the Highland Ravens, what stole it? They got it. It's a steal on the Pyromancer. And the Ravens needed some life here in this game, but Variety stepping forward. That's often where the Kings will get you. It'll be a clean steal for the Ravens and out.
I couldn't even catch what takes that one away. I thought the Camelot Kings had it post-Typhoon. Kata wants a bit more.
Oh, Twig has been walled off in the crushing wave. Sends him back into the solo lane. Blink as well on the disengage. Pressure still mounting from the Highland Ravens. This SEC squad not going to roll over quietly.
No, they're playing with confidence all the way across the map. If we had a heat map, the Camelot Kings have not stepped into the Highland Ravens side except for the chase on the red buff, post-red buff invade. Otherwise, it's been Ravens asking the question everywhere. You ready to defend these back camps? How do you feel about this Greater Scorpion? Do you want it? You have to fight at least 3 of us. And the Camelot Kings, they're used to this. They play against some of the highest paced teams in the world. You play against the Jade Dragons, you're used to losing a couple purples.
Right.
The Highland Ravens, they got to continue asking those questions.
The tug of war continues over in duo. Coast had a level lead a moment ago. Now Jarcorrr takes it back. It's the early kill in this game. Slight edge then to the Camelot Kings ADC. And we've talked a lot this week about MVP candidates throughout the entire year. Jarcorrr has had one of the craziest years we've maybe ever seen. Played 3 different roles on 3 different teams, and he's been near the top of the tier list every single time he's loaded into this game.
and going to be such an important aspect of this Camelot Kings team if they're going to make a run towards finals.
I can't believe the duo lane's been as quiet as it has.
Agreed.
I mean, this is two hunters that just love to run it down. What happens when the unstoppable force meets the unstoppable force? Not a whole lot in this duo lane.
No immovable objects in the lane? Just
no,
two
these guys are
unstoppable
running at
forces.
each other.
Myth, do you feel, all right, I want to rewind the clock a bit, if you will. When you were on the world stage, fighting for a world championship.
I lost a lot of those.
Did you lose a lot of world championships?
It retired me. Thanks for reminding me. Day one?
Did you retire aggro, or did he retire you? Wait.
Come on. Do you think aggro was stopping me?
Yeah?
No.
I want to talk about the pacing, though, of those worlds matches for you, and I'll hold that thought. Twig might get a knock up here. Decent wall from Cozy, but he's abducted by genetics. Looks like the beads off of the Ymir. Adapting still close by. He's one level up over CaptainTwig as well. In these game ones, world stage, do you think you're finding your footing in the first 15 minutes, just trying to get a feel for the game again?
It's just such a different play style, right? You don't want to fumble. Twig might be able to move his way in here, but instead should fizzle the aggression there. It's a much slower pace in game one. It's, do we really want to play all year to lose it in the early? Let's go ahead and play for our strengths. And with the Kings, that's generally the lane.
Kana is making his way out of the solo lane. Seen a bit of the Jormungandr, just because there's been pressure on right. Now might have something to say in mid. Now back to back, crushing waves defensively from Twig. Typhoon won't hit its mark. But Kana, he's still out for blood. Angry's used both of the actives, but he's gonna have to dash away. Now the set out of this fight. VaporishCoast with it all to do. The wall from Cozy. It's perfect. He'll be the sacrifice. And another one to Jarcorrr and the Kings.
The Camelot Kings rotate in late, but perfectly catch out the aggression from the Highland Ravens. Jarcorrr in particular not only catches the stun onto Cozy, but takes the beads off of Coast. And take your eyes towards the timing as well. Fury's back up.
Man.
The Camelot Kings take the fight. It's clinical. They have got Smite down to a science.
They've got double ADCs. You think this one's going to burn just fine at 16 and a half minutes. So a fantastic start to game one for the Kings, where the gold myth has been slow going, but the Kings into the Furies have been perfect from the Camelot Kings. This is where the Ravens, I don't think you can give up on the aggression that in these downtimes, in these slower moments, they've been able to build up that gold lead regardless of those mid lane fights.
But you start to get concerned now as we approach that 20-minute mark about this scaling composition from the Camelot Kings. It's double hunted. It's a Hebo out of the jungle, and you've got a Khepri to make it all safe. The dive of the Highland Ravens is concentrated. Angry, largely single target. VaporishCoast, if he goes in with the ultimate, that's just drawing your target and saying, that's the guy we're going on.
Right.
Makes it easy for genetics to find his Scarab's Blessing.
Now remember, the Highland Ravens stole away the Pyromancer. They pulled it, the Kings showed up, the Ravens then dropped it, and the last bit of damage dealt by the Highland Ravens. And so the objectives a bit split so far this game, though the steal makes all the difference. Starting to spool up now, though, as CaptainTwig myth. Remember, Adapting's been the one rotating through, initiating a lot of these fights early, but we have still seen that pressure onto the Hebo. How many times have we seen him ult away? But that's a teleport through from Variety and a 5-man grouping from the Camelot Kings.
Here.
What a call this would be. Kana rooted in place, and the World Serpent needed. Typhoon hits a couple on the back of the fight, and this will be very telling where Kana ends up going, out and away. And the Kings, talk about respect. They demand respect. They group as 5 around the FG, and the Ravens have to reply.
2 massive ultimates lost at that, World Serpent and the Typhoon. Camelot Kings have their pick of the litter. Is it going to be a tower or the Pyro? They choose Pyro. Where are the Ravens?
Nowhere close. Pyromancer to the Camelot Kings. They get this one cleanly after the last one stolen away. But Variety is ulted forward. Goes into the rocket. Splits the uprights. He'll be out defensively. Coast has not been able to ride the rocket in many times throughout this game so far.
The Camelot Kings are taking away the Ravens' weapons piecemeal, one ultimate at a time. You're getting weaker and weaker in the team fight. And the Kings, what have they expended? A blink from Variety, an ultimate as well. The Mulan, not necessarily in need of those anymore. It's more so just luxury. Can I get into that back line? Do I have CC immunity? Even if you don't, that Scarab's Blessing, which has gone unused so far, I'm thinking we're gonna dust it off pretty soon.
Where do we think we are? The loading bar of this Hebo. Fully stacked Book of Thoth, Breastplate of Valor, into the Soul Gem. Are we feeling strong enough to do this?
I think so, and it's burning quickly. The Highland Ravens have to step up. It's got to be Kana in first.
Might be a miracle steal scenario. It's low. The Camelot Kings get the FG, but now trying to get out. Knock up onto Variety, no good, because the Mulan ult not there. Beads necessary, but Kana still stepping forward. Will finish the ult away. Clean from the Kings. They've only got 2 kills, Myth. and now they got a massive advantage.
The Kings have never been a kill team. It's always been about the objectives, and they've got eyes for more. Tier 1 tower on right, as CaptainTwig lines up against the King. No way we see a fight there. The Highland Ravens got to defend on these tier 2s. Their composition, not exactly the best in this situation. Lacking the standard mage means the Kings will have a very easy time getting the minion wave in. And since it's a pre-30 fire, you kind of got to deal with those backdoor protections.
Kana, a bit of damage. First couple of items that CaptainTwig has on the other side. Triple goose eggs for everyone on the Highland Ravens right now, except for Cozy. I mean, you expect the Ymir to get caught out once or twice.
He's been active.
Been active, though, on this Jormungandr.
So far, I'm keeping my eyes on the Ravens and where they decide to position. As of now, we see most teams scrounging throughout the map. What farm can we get before the enemy steps up to a tier 2? Buffs starting to spawn up. You can push out some of these waves as well. Split push, not exactly an option for the Highland Ravens. Anybody who could is essentially necessary in the base defense. Maybe you send Kana over, but even then, hasn't upgraded to the teleport just yet. It's the Camelot Kings map now. It's just where they want to put that pressure and whether or not the Highland Ravens can answer it.
That's right, so often this is where the Kings really break the game open. Defensively, Myth. I mean, we got a lot of towers to work through here. Only one on the Highland Ravens side of the map has dropped. They've done a good job, though. The Ravens have at least pushing out a bit of pressure against the Kings, trying to slow down as much of this Fire Giant power play as they can. You got about 2 minutes left already if you're the Kings. Do you feel like now you're trying to just not lose the game on this Fire Giant? Clearly the Titan's not going to drop, but gold-wise, if you're the Highland Ravens, are you trying to cauterize these wounds, slow down the Kings as best you can?
The Fire Giant so early in this game, if I'm the Highland Ravens, the only concern I have is let's not lose a Phoenix. And the only way to lose a Phoenix is to die on a tier 2. So put up soft defenses, slow down the Camelot Kings, but don't sacrifice your lives. 1 pick, 2 picks, you lose a bird. 3, all of a sudden it's the Titan.
It's crazy how different this game could have looked had a few of those kills from the Highland Ravens been finished off. Adapting and Angry combined for a lot of damage early in the game in mid. You've slowly watched this game trickle away from you, but this is where the veteranship of someone like Adapting, who's been there, who's done that. Gold Fury, in the meantime, will go to the Camelot Kings. No pressure back from the Highland Ravens, so that one not much of a coin flip. This is where Adapting, I think, really needs to step up and speak up for his team. Your back's against the wall. You're already looking down a 20-minute Fire Giant. He's a veteran. He's turned around games like this in the past.
And I love what the Ravens have done. It's almost as if the Camelot Kings are just waiting for that mistake, waiting for someone to step out of these towers. The Ravens aren't going to give you that opportunity. You're not getting a free card here. The Camelot Kings, if they want any more, they're going to have to fight for it now.
Kin size completed from BigManTingz. It's often the answer to the Cthulhus and the Jormungandrs of the world. Kana's going to have to pick and choose where some of those World Serpents drop down. Siege on the tier 2, you called it, Myth. A bit given up here by the Highland Ravens. That'll open up the Phoenix in the final 40 seconds of this Fire Giant power play. Are just going to be backing and resetting for the Kings. It's about as clinical as it gets, and the question all week long was, Kings had a lot of downtime. The most recent time we saw them was when they were in studio picking their opponents. It'd been a month or so since we actually saw them play. Seems like we skipped no beats here in game 1.
No, the Camelot Kings are in peak form, but the Highland Ravens, having created that gold experience buffer before the Fire Giant had gone down, keep themselves close in this one. Look, it's not out of control. Sure, not an ideal situation, 4K, but look at the itemization. Really the largest disparity maybe out of the mid lane. Angry lagging a bit behind here, but the burst potential and the real power spikes of an assassin have generally been hit already. You've got the Jotuns, the Transcendence, the ability to maneuver the map, and great targets to look at. But what we haven't seen just yet is a true team fight. And the first hurdle for the Ravens is getting through the Scarab's Blessing.
Right.
The fact that it's gone unused so far,
Yeah, has he used it at all
it's
yet?
ridiculous.
I don't think he has. I haven't seen a Scarab's Blessing drop from genetics, at least one that's made an impact on a lot of these fights. And that's a totally great point. If we're talking about a conversation where the Ravens dropped early kills because the Scarab's Blessing limited it, you know, that's one thing, but it feels like just a few have escaped from the Highland Ravens. Still, Myth, you have to believe, especially against the Camelot Kings, especially with the map state the way it is, Highland Ravens maybe have to feel confident enough to step up, defend this Fire Giant, maybe look for a pick. You got double Assassin, a little bit of skewer damage from Angry.
Yeah, keep your eyes on Cozy. If he lines up a wall, there's so many targets here that just don't have an answer. So if you're looking for a pick,
and no
he's your
Shell.
spearhead. No Phantom Shell as well. Could lock him down. The only concern, though, still is, what's your burst afterward? Where's the damage coming from? Is it always Angry? Does it need to be the Typhoon? I think it comes down to both the Guardians here for the Ravens. If they have a good fight, the Ravens do.
Oh, you're on razor-thin margins here. And the Highland Ravens are learning it the hard way. Coast gets into the rocket this time. And again, a defensive rocket from the Highland Ravens ADC as Cxnnahh left on an island just a bit. Camelot Kings burn away a couple ultimates of the Ravens, but the Ravens have done the same. Fire Giant down to half. Can Adapting make some magic happen? He's going to have to go over the wall. Fire not stolen away. It was close, but the Kings confirm the FG, and the chase begins. On to Adapting. The damage connects. Variety pulled back through once more. Misses a stun. Adapting out for now. And Cozy there on the assist.
But the Camelot Kings at the end of the day is still the big winner in that trade. Fire Giant on all 5. And the ability to continue pushing forward. Look at the ultimates of the Highland Ravens. It's a wasteland. But the Camelot Kings, always slow, will take their time, head back to base, spend up that gold. Hit some pretty significant power spikes at that. Silver Branch for BigManTingz. A little bit more penetration, dishing up that bow tree for Jarcorrr as well. And there's only one more tower standing between the Kings and the exposed birds of the Highland Ravens. What we had said almost 10 minutes ago is that the Highland Ravens, their draft is not built for defense. And the thing about 10 minutes is that hasn't changed anything. It still is not ideal. The difference being now is that the Camelot Kings have really started to build up a significant lead. I think it still comes down to these walls. Cozy could really put a dampener on the initiation. Yep. But the Camelot Kings, it's not standard, is it? It's not, all right, we go in with our Guardian, we set up the CC, we follow up with damage. It's, we've poked you out, you lost your ultimate, and now you're losing some structures. The Ravens, if the first fight doesn't go well, I don't see the second fight going much better.
And the difference is with this FG MIF, we are now in game end territory in the way that the first was just opening up that opportunity. If the Highland Ravens lose, a handy enough fight here could be in a bad spot. Angry and Variety scrapping it out in mid. And it looks like the set will be okay for now. But Variety, the master of just pulling away small advantages, and that'll begin the siege for the Kings.
Just takes way too much damage in mid. That Phoenix might be a foregone conclusion. If everybody rotates, you lose the left. The Camelot Kings keeping them guessing.
Is now the time for the Highland Ravens. You feel like, by your own analysis there, Myth, might need to be the team to find a block off, find a dive, find a pick, but the Scarab's Blessing that we haven't seen get used makes that so difficult. Cxnnahh will get into the World Serpent. A couple of those charges will be sent out as an odd-numbered fight in favor of the Highland Ravens over in mid. While the left side Phoenix getting siege. Cxnnah's got the knockup on the Tings, and it's Cxnnahh with the first kill of the set for the Highland Ravens. Angry and Variety still dueling it out over in mid. But for now, job done maybe by the Highland Ravens.
Variety, there's the first Scarab's Blessing, makes his way out, but where's Adapting?
Oh, he's fighting with Yark in mid. Oh, Adapting
got him
on the fadeaway shot from Jarcorrr. Variety on a warpath begins his march into the mid lane Phoenix, but this time the Jormungandr will live.
Watch Coast, what's he doing all the way up there? He's got to get back on the defense. The Camelot Kings have still come to play. Midbird taking damage. Ravens, you got to move in.
It's still up. Is the fight now? Is the time now for the magic of VaporishCoast to make itself known? Mid Phoenix dropped by the Camelot Kings. And that's the last swing of the sword here on this siege.
Still a minute left on the Fire Giants. The Ravens still have to play cautious on the chase out, but the Camelot Kings, they've taken what they've come for, finally exposing the throne room of the Highland Ravens. And it's this trepidatious push. Are we going for left? Are we going for mid? Kept me guessing, kept the Ravens guessing as well. And in that situation, how can you defend solidly anywhere? The Camelot Kings finally hit pay dirt, only at the cost of one. Not too bad. But look at the relic situation for both of these teams. Beads lost the majority of the Ravens, whereas the Camelot Kings, the only who's really in any form of danger is BigManTingz. If the Ravens close gap on him again, that's your way back in.
Variety on this Mulan myth, I think got to be talked about a bit, because so often it's a laning phase, God, right? Eventually, later on in the game, it's going to be more difficult to find the impact. Has not been the case so far for Variety this game. Adds a little anti-heal towards the end as well. I think Variety's got a bit more to say here in game one.
The damage output's been good from Variety at that. I mean, go all the way back to the beginning of that Phoenix siege.
It's so long ago.
It's Angry, staring down CaptainTwig in mid, distracted by the jungle. Who walks in behind him? Variety takes 60% of his HP bar and says, hey guys, it's a 5v4 now. And just has so much time to play with on that siege. Now it's the Camelot Kings again. Still their map, can push in towards this fire. Mid Phoenix, not the most difficult to defend, as you simultaneously try and contest a Fire Giant. It's just whether or not the Highland Ravens are confident enough in their damage output to step up.
Only
Mid lane fire minions to deal with. Oni fire minions at that. 30 seconds away from the third fire giant of this game. It's been clinical from the Kings, and these are the types of games from the Ravens. Is kinda
I have no idea.
Way on the Camelot Kings side of the jungle. Has adapting for some coverage in mid as well, but the rest of
they don't see him.
The Highland Ravens are not here. I like the trap, but now the Highland Ravens have to be worried about getting
no man's land
out. Cxnnahh alone with BigManTingz, with CaptainTwig. How to use the World Serpent as well, and if the Fire Giant just now respawns, this Jormungandr, his impact, very limited in the next fight.
I love the idea. It's, hey, we'll loop around, we'll set up the pincer, but where have you left your front line?
It's Ymir! It's a wall! It's a freeze! Then it's Cozy, who somehow gets out alive for now!
See ya.
But here's Twig, here's Variety, a double kill on the Hebo! And that may have just opened up the Titan.
The Camelot Kings stepping forward, adapting, last stand, but what can you do alone?
He'll dash away, but angry adapting Cxnnahh. They've got everything to do. As it angry once more will slip away, but CaptainTwig is on the chase. Waterhands knock up. You need just one bit of damage to find its way onto this set. Adapting as well, delaying out. The Highland Ravens, 30 seconds on the dual lane respawn.
And you got the trebuchet here as well. Left side, Phoenix should fall quickly. Where are the Camelot Kings' minds? They want to end game one, it looks like it.
The methodical team marches their way into the Titan room, and the Highland Ravens will not be avoiding going down 0-1. The Camelot Kings, they swing first. Jarcorrr will end the game at 4-0-2, and it's a 1-0 lead to the SPL.
The Ravens just fall into the Camelot Kings pacing in that one, don't they? It's a slow, early game. Sure, you establish a lead, but 1,000, 1,500, that's not enough. Not with this highly aggressive mid laner. You gotta do more. The Camelot Kings, it's not you give them an inch, they take a mile. No. You gotta take the mile first.
Yeah, I don't know, 1.5K gold or so is what the Highland Ravens had at points throughout that early game.
Good at that point.
I don't know if that's a mile though, Miff. It's a quarter mile. We're not nearly there. Probably a hard game for the Ravens to break down because I feel like they checked a lot of their own boxes, right? You had adapting, feeling aggressive early in that game, couldn't finish off a few of those kills. Heck, if you're stabilizing against the Kings in the first 5-10 minutes, you're feeling okay. But to your point, it's when those games slow down, when the objectives build up. We were one stolen Pyromancer away from a perfect objective game for the Camelot Kings.
But when you take into account pace, I think that's the issue there for the Ravens. Sure, your fights are going great early, but it was fights after the Kings had already taken a Gold Fury or already taken the Pyromancer. When did the Kings fight? 2 seconds before Gold Fury respawn.
Right.
A second before the Pyromancer's back up. It's a question of pacing. When are you taking these fights and why are you taking them? The Kings had the answer every time. The Ravens, they were taking fights because they could.
Does it need to be more aggressive from the Ravens, or do you just think it needs to be better timed to your point?
I think so.
You can still fight in a similar pacing, but maybe at a different time. Do you think this changes up picks and bans? We'll hear from the desk in a little bit. Double ADC composition feels tailor-made for the Camelot Kings. It's a very difficult team to pick ban against.
I think if anything, I'm looking at that mid. I didn't see enough from the set. I want to see a standard mage from Angry because he's been dominating on those types of picks all year.
Miff, I'm sweaty. Game number 1, it's over. I'm gonna get a drink of water. We'll take a break and be right back to break it down. What's up, Smite fans? Dolson here, and Season 9 of the SPL is shaping up to be maybe the best ever. And to help us get there, we're partnering with Alienware to provide us, our players, the production team, with state-of-the-art gear to make this year one of the best yet. But don't take my word for it. Let's hear what the pros have to say.
As a professional player, it's super important to make sure that you just have the absolute highest quality gear and peripherals that you can ever get. And having an Alienware PC has completely upped our game here at the SPL.
It's really nice being able to play from the same PC from home into the studio, and I highly, highly recommend it. It feels great to play on.
So I really enjoyed using Alienware computers because, one, I'm a streamer, content is my job, and the power of the Alienware PCs is like amazing. It's perfect for everything that we need to do.
I stream 1080p, no problem. I have no issues with FPS, no frame lag or anything like that.
64 gigabytes of RAM is just something that you can only dream of, and like it helps so much with processing like anything that you need to perform, like multitasking, whether it's streaming, recording, gaming, like everything all at once, and it's been a very smooth experience.
As someone who doesn't enjoy building my own PC, the Alienware's kind of got everything in one machine. It was super easy.
A 3090 is like impossible to obtain, so being able to play on it has been honestly a very lucky experience.
Back in the day, I used to game and do all my content on a really pathetic laptop, and once I actually was able to get an Alienware PC, there's just no turning back.
For a lot of players that were used to just their home setups and maybe didn't have top quality products, going to such a huge upgrade with our Alienware PCs has just absolutely increased the quality of our practice.
I'm just a big fan of Alienware. I think they're the top of the line PCs literally for a reason.
It's definitely the best PC I've ever had by a long way.
Shoutouts to Alienware, great company, love them a lot.
And I have nothing but praise for the product.
That's high praise from some of the best gamers in the world. So thanks again to Alienware for powering us this year in Season 9 of the SMITE Pro League. And remember, if you want to get your hands on some of the gear that our pro players play on, make sure to check out Alienware on all of their socials and at their website as well.
I think if I didn't have my Alienware, I would go out and purchase one right now.
And welcome back, everyone, as we get into the post-game desk here to talk about game number 1. It's Gore, it's Trelly, and it's Hazer one more time. Of course, as we are getting prepared to get into game number 2, we have to look back, reflect on what, well, at this point, I guess the Ravens will need to do to try and change things up, or, on the inverse, what the Kings need to do to keep things rolling their way. The one thing that they can be sure of, though, is that their PCs are going to work really well and that their monitors are going to be looking good because they're up there on the Aurora Ryzen R10 desktops brought to you by Alienware alongside those 244 Hz gaming monitors. In fact, if you want to be able to play, you can get your own. We have a giveaway going on right now with Alienware for an Aurora R14 desktop. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, in the event that you have never built a computer, every single number under the CPU, GPU, RAM, and storage is just impressive for what they're bringing. So you want to go enter that now, try to get your own PC, and of course game like the pros. If not, you can always go to SMITEgame.com/Alienware and use code AWSMITE09 for some discounts. If you're getting the PC, maybe you need the gaming monitor, maybe you need some peripherals, the keyboard, the mice, and you want to make sure that you can get those. But make sure, if you're watching, you are entering the giveaway to try and pick that one up as soon as possible for you. Try to get the win. And right now, I think the biggest thing that we're thinking about, Trelly, Hazer, is going to be what the Ravens need to do to try and transition what was a pretty decent early game into a stronger, more consistent Hazer, specifically late game, right? Objectives weren't going their way except for one steal. Kills weren't really going their way, but despite all that, they still held a gold lead for a long time that game.
Yeah, they seem to farm the map really, really well. And typically what we've seen is that go the other way, right? The SEC teams come in and they're able to get kills, but they can't farm like the top of the line pros. But they did really, really well. But then it felt like they just didn't have the damage to kill anybody. The Khepri, the fizz procs that were coming through from the Kings just prevented them picking up any early kills. And the game eventually went down to objectives, and you're not going to beat the Kings there.
And Trelly, I think a few things that always stand out. First off, Ishtar getting locked in, period, makes sense. We were expecting it coming into the event. Adapting was slippery. He got away from a lot of scenarios, able to help turn some around, live, and moments where it feels like he just should not have been able to get away. Good walls as well coming down from Cozyx to make sure that they kept things rolling. But the problem was it never felt like they really got their true punch back. I think they get a kill here, and they had those moments, but otherwise, you're seeing Twig. There's a point he hits a two-man ult. Trelly, you're looking at the damage coming down from Tings and Jarcorrr. You've got Genetics making saves. It just felt really hard for them to get on in the fight department.
It seemed to me like the Highland Ravens put a lot of priority on that set mid, and they didn't put a lot of priority on the duo lane, right? It didn't seem like Coast was really popping off on the Danzaburou like we would expect from him. I just imagine picking up that Ishtar first and giving up Cernunnos would have been more favorable than what they ended up doing.
Yeah.
Possibly expected more from Angry. He was very slippery as well, but in this game, you don't need to get out. You need to be proactive. You need to be looking for kills. You need to fight, and in this case, it was a lot of running away, not too much brawling. We did highlight the farm, but in game number 2, I'm thinking put Coast on either Cern or Ishtar, or put a little bit more priority into that early game.
I know the casters were calling Angry Hazer to play mage, right? As long as it's a big mage, maybe a little bit better, but a mage nonetheless. Try and get that up, because we were looking at it. I literally just wrote Jorm with a question mark, because it's like, I get where you're coming from. You've got 3 physical otherwise, double assassin. You need something that comes out there. You banned out the Hades if you're the Ravens, but it just feels like it didn't bring enough. So I would like to see them just swap that over.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the magical in the jungle for the Kings made a lot more sense in terms of their comp. They kind of covered that lack of magical damage. The Jorm wasn't quite able to bring the same damage to the table. And I never want to see a set 3ing out, a Jorm ulting out, a Danza rocketing out as many times as we saw that game. They just weren't able to be on the front foot with the comp that they had, and that's where it really fell down. Something that they need to change is just going to be objective control, grouping up. I think was what I was talking the most about for the Ravens, trying to figure out where there was even a point that we were starting to see a Phoenix Siege, Tactics in no man's land on the other side of the map. We'll see what they can do. And we'll do it right now as we get to picks and bans for game number 2. I'm never going to get tired of that. Kings going to be the first pick this time around. So in theory, and actually what we've been seeing a lot more lately, it's a very small margin, but second pick has been a little more successful over the last few events, especially with all the high priority gods. It feels like getting those top 2 feels really solid. Trelly, they're starting this one off. Baba Yaga banned out by the Kings. Najah banned on the other side. Another shot at adapting with the Thor. So far,
nothing too unexpected out of the Bans.
I mean, the Kings don't have to change up anything. I would imagine all the changes need to come from the Ravens, and in this situation, they're actually going to take away that set. They don't value it anymore, or more specifically, they don't want the Kings to be able to first pick it.
Yeah.
So it looks like that's going to be the option there. But the Kings can run back half that strategy. They certainly could be able to grab either the Ishtar or the Cern. It looks like the Ravens are valuing that Cern a little bit more. They are not going to let that one go over to BigManTingz in the mid lane or over to Jarcorrr in ADC. Is it going to be the Maui that the Camelot Kings are going to let the Ishtar through? I have to imagine that's a snap block for the Ravens.
Hazer, how do you feel? Maui first pick? I mean, I'm sure aggro somewhere in the studio, their stadium is feeling really good, but do you think he brings enough?
Yeah, I think he's absolutely fantastic. That 2 is just so powerful. The movement it gives your team. I feel like we haven't scratched the surface of what really great players could do with that ability. I'm excited to see what Cxnnahh does. He's always one trying to kind of push the boundaries of what you can do with these characters, trying to get creative, and I really want to see what they can do with Maui too.
Yeah, it was on the rise there in the playoffs, right? Very, very rare that we got to see it for a lot of these SPL teams a lot throughout the SEC. But you were calling it earlier, Trelly. Ishtar makes it through, and they're going to lock it in for the Ravens, so there's already one good change, presumably going over towards Coast. They also pick up the Hades. They banned that last time around. You have to imagine that feels great, but it's scary. I'd imagine sitting on the stage right now, seeing Lancelot locked in for Twig. He has been running the show with this pick lately.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy. I mean, that early pressure that Lancelot can bring, we've seen how much Twig can do on, as well as that Rama. Not the greatest matchup early into the Ishtar, but if you can get a level 5, some poke down, those snipes you got to imagine are going to be landing consistently. And the adapting Fenrir locked in here. Not a great matchup in any of these characters, but when you think about Lancelot, trying to aggress onto him early can be the call on Fenrir. All he wants to do is fight early.
And he's going to do it well. We've actually seen, if you go back, you want to watch some Ravens games, adapting having quite a few picks, like Ratatoskr was getting banned from him, the Fenrir was getting banned from him. It was just moments where he would carry the entire team to a victory, which admittedly not uncommon for the King, right? He's used to doing that. Artio locked in, or sorry, banned away. Got to be clear on that one. By the Ravens on the other side, Agni. So it seems like the Kings are on a similar vein of thought as us, Hazer. It's definitely mages right now that they're looking at, trying to control Angry.
Yeah, for sure. And taking Angry away from that Baba Yaga, he's already showed that he didn't quite perform on the set, and I think they want to keep making him uncomfortable, keep trying to exploit that mid lane, let BigManTingz have an easy time out there. And it'll go into the jungle as well. Mid lane really affects the way the junglers can play, and it just gives them an advantage sort of across the map in that way.
Now, this is across the year, and admittedly cuts out a few of these games, but Tiamat was a really big pick for the Ravens for a very long time.
It's time
and
to
instead
turn
of
this
hedging their
battle
bets with
in our
another
favor.
mage, they go for a Ymir ban from the Kings. Cozyx having some beautiful walls there in game number 1. Athena locked in. Shelly, it's been a while, not too long. I mean, we've seen the stray Athena here and there, sometimes thrown in the jungle, but locked in here for Cozyx for the Ravens. Do you think the setup's going to be good enough?
What I see is 4 beads burners on the side of the Ravens, right? That's got to be all-out aggression in the early. Adapting's jumping in with that Ragnarok, trying to pull beads from someone, and then the follow-up should be there. What I don't see is that big mage follow-up in the mid lane. Of course, you got that Hades that can come through later. You need some itemization, though, for Hades to have that follow-up. Angry, you got to imagine, as you said, the Tiamat could be the topic of conversation. The Kings weren't too worried about it. They banned out the Agni and the Baba, which I think Angry has looked very solid on. But the Tiamat, I guess, was just not something that they were too worried about. Doesn't have the greatest early pressure. Yeah. And since the Kings have been consistently farming very well, it seems like they're not too worried about giving up that Tiamat.
Well, it's actually, you know, looking at the last game, early pressure, at least gold-wise, farm-wise, was going to the Ravens, right? I mean, there were points where it's like the Kings got a Fury and First Blood. They were still down like 500 gold, and then it slowly creeped back up to 2K. And it wasn't until they were starting to get those fights and get a little bit more, they get a Pyromancer that really kind of equalizes things out. Almost feels like a late game pick like that, Hazer, would maybe benefit the Ravens here, because we know, I mean, it was 4 kills in 30 minutes. Like, you're going to make it there. Can you farm enough is the question for the Ravens.
Yeah, it was a real slow game. But what I would like to see for the Ravens, I think the reason I'd like to see them go away from this Tiamat is the amount of setup they have. They have Hades sucking people in, they've got Fenrir picking people up, they've got Athena taunting people. I want to see big ults, big abilities on top of that. Maybe not exactly a Scylla, but something in that ilk. And we see Discordia and Osiris come through, side lane pressure locked in for the Kings.
I'm going to say this as unbiased as I possibly can, but I'm terrified of that draft. I mean, that is such a good Kings draft. Osiris, for variety, you get him on something that he can get hands-on with. You've got the Discordia out of mid, Trelly, that we've seen a lot, plus the top 3 and mechanically lately have just been absolutely dominant. I think there's a lot of work for the Ravens to be done just off the 5 that the Kings are bringing in.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy because I think the Ravens showed their hand a bit with that Fenrir pick early on. They want to try and play through adapting in the early, but if you're giving that Discordia passive over to CaptainTwig on the Lancelot, you could also give it over to the Osiris. Variety would love that extra damage in solo lane, and it's not going to be fun. The Yu Huang is going to be that last pick. Very good ultimate. I mean, great in team fights, something to follow up with these beads being down. I think the Ravens still did get exactly what they wanted for that early pressure. It's just going to be all about the Kings. Can they play this Discordia passive well enough? How much are they going to get done off that early pressure as well?
It's a terrifying team to have to go up against in the Kings, but the Ravens, in my opinion, did a really good job in game number 1. Would never have guessed that, in theory, right, it's the top seed, the 8 first versus 8, right, technically, with the way the bracket shakes out. So being able to have all of those picks, have them do as well as they did, and now I would argue getting a more comfortable draft hazer, having something that feels like it can get a little bit hands-on. I feel like the Ravens could push us to 3.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a strong comp they've got here. I love the way the Kings have balanced their comp as well. Early game to late game, it feels like they play well throughout the game, and I love this bottom 2 for them. Disco Osiris feels really, really powerful.
Well, it's time to find out. Do you think the Ravens can tie us up, or are the Kings going to close it out in 2? We're going to go back to David Mifflin and find out.
Myth, let's pick up right where the desk leaves off there. You think this is a 2-0 for the Camelot Kings? It's a slow burn of a game. Is it enough momentum?
Look, this is a Camelot Kings draft, all right? I mean, you could write it down on paper. Screen cap any game they played at any point this year, and there's a 50-50 that it's this 5-man stack. That's scary. You gave the hot hand to the first seed, and now they're playing comfort picks.
Right. And look, I look at BMT on Discordia mid. That is one of the tried and trues for BigManTingz.
It is.
One of the best mid laners over the last 2, 3, 4 years of SPL that we've had. He has been rock solid for basically every team that he's played on. In Discordia, you call it a pocket pick for maybe a bunch of the mid laners in the SPL. I don't know if it is for BMT.
No, this is bread and butter for BMT. Right. He's playing what he does, and the Camelot Kings uniquely suited to playing around that passive. I imagine we see it on Variety for the majority of that early game. I don't know, Osiris with a Discordia passive?
Yeah.
That's run it down style play. I imagine we see the Camelot Kings try and match some of the pace, though, that this Ravens draft's brought. The desk does a great job setting it up. It's a whole lot of pressure, especially in the early game. Something we talk about a whole lot with Yu Huang.
Yeah.
Levels 1 through 3, very good. Levels 4 through 10, fall off a bit until he starts to step it back up.
What about mentality, though, now for the Highland Ravens, where it feels like a couple kills early in game 1 got away from you, get an objective steal, coin flip a couple FGs, get real close to stealing those away? Are you doubling down on aggression if you're this Highland Ravens team?
I think so, but the same notes I had at the end of game 1 are the same here. It's timing. Don't go into a fight if a Fury's already down. Don't go into a fight if you don't have the plan afterward. A one fight when you get nothing after it, it doesn't matter. Right. You got to invade red buffs. You got to get on these purples. You got to jump on these golds.
What do you say, SMITE fans? Let's get into game number 2 between the Camelot Kings and the Highland Ravens. And it's the Camelot Kings who feel like this is their event. They feel like this is the best team that they've had put together, and the chemistry at an all-time high. The number 1 seed coming out of Phase 3 playoffs, Myth. Say what you will about their side of the bracket. You needed to look convincing in game 1. They did so. The Highland Ravens, they are a very, very talented team. The gauntlet they had to go through SWC group stages just this past weekend. A lot of veteran talent on that team, adapting. VaporishCoast. Still a bit of magic, maybe, for the Highland Ravens in game 2.
Yeah, I actually really like the early itemization from the Ravens. Look at the jungle and look at support. Those are the clear delineations. You've got a bit more pressure from adapting. The jungle stat line much better than Bumba's dagger. Whoa. Grabs it. Can he make it out?
Cozy
He's all right.
Getting autoed. Grabs the purple buff, but in exchange for some of his HP, you ask about getting aggressive. That's a fine way to start things off. And the Camelot Kings now are going to have to think a little bit of extra hard about this dual lane. Yark trading autos with Cozy Med being used early in this lane as well. So a bit of a funky start here, Myth, over in the dual lane. And it's Cozy, it's VaporishCoast asking the questions.
Yeah, but the Ravens lost both their relics on first wave. Right. That's tough.
The answer was fine. Cozy body blocked off a bit. Yark's got to hit it all. And will still back away. We did talk a bit in game 1, though, Myth, specifically duo lane. it was quiet, which is surprising given you got Coast and Jarc, two of the more aggressive AD carries going up against one another on the left side.
Yeah, Coast certainly has pressure insofar as God selection this time around. Not many hunters going to out-pressure an Ishtar. 1v1 potentially, even in the 2v2, the ability to just shove those waves. So incredibly strong. But what we have seen consistently from the Ram is the ability to chase out these kills.
Right.
You get dropped low, Jarc's not missing.
No, especially once level 5 gets hit. Taunt in, and some nice damage from VaporishCoast. Wonder if Nerve's starting to build up here as well. Playing right on the edge of handing over a kill. Adapting and CaptainTwig Myth, they made their way to mid lane often in game 1.
Wow.
VaporishCoast chunked down, but again, it's Cozy stepping forward. It's a double taunt. VaporishCoast,
gotta
do you
block
have
him.
the autos? Cxnnahh steps away. And there's a slight potential rotation in from Adapting here, Myth. He has Blink, and it looks like the Camelot Kings somewhat aware.
Yeah, good communication. That's got to be BigManTingz letting them know, hey, Adapting's left side of the map, you're already a dead man walking. Let's go ahead and back this one up. The Camelot Kings playing with fire here.
Purple
But even
invade.
with that rotation, there's an invade on the opposite side.
That's right, Kings will send pressure towards blue while the Highland Ravens steal away purple buff. So the early goings of this game, Myth, maybe it's just aggression from Coast and Cozy, but a purple buff steal to start the game and now a re-steal on the second purple buff. Seems like the
Wants to stop the
mindset is to
back.
limit
Got him.
Jarc as best you can. Backstopped, yes. And a sudden swing away from Cxnnahh, but Adapting
he
is
dead?
followed up. Has Cxnnahh done too much? The lobbed autos, one more. Adapting, the king. First blood for the Ravens.
Cxnnahh, it's a great play. You stopped the back, bud, but you gave over a little too much in exchange. Adapting so simple. Leaps in, goes in early too. Takes the stun from Maui, who cares? You've got the chase down immediately afterward. But what really surprised me there is how ready the rest of the Ravens were. Sure, Adapting, that makes sense to me. How does VaporishCoast know he needs to be there? Game sense through the roof. Great team play from the Ravens.
Let's be honest, if any fighting is going on the left side of the map, Coast
He's
wants
there.
to be there, right? If he knows any type
He
of
wants
fighting
all the
is going to be
smoke.
happening, Coast has got to step up for it. To your point, Myth, Kings did a really good job of countering out pressure over on right, stole away the blue buff. And Kana's on still a magical solo laner this game, but one that has seen a lot of play. Hades, a bit more straightforward in the initiation department. Important to allow this Hades to get to a strong point later on in this game. CaptainTwig has hit level
He's got
5
ult.
though, has ult as well. Adapting
want it.
will not get chased down, but a couple of jungle camps will go missing as CaptainTwig flexes the muscles.
I'm glad you bring up this Hades pick because when you compare it to Jormungandr, they can both be left alone on an island, but there's a difference. Leave Hades on an island, leave him alone. He's going to dominate the lane. He's got sustain through the roof, scales incredibly well with the full magic damage build. What, in a duo lane? Just poking and prodding.
Yeah, for now. You can never be too sure, right? You never know when it's a full initiation from VaporishCoast.
I see a double
and Jarc.
taunt, I'm going to give it to you every time.
Yeah, every single time. Appreciate you there, Myth. But you're right, the dual lane, or the solo lane rather, gonna look different from Kana here this game. CaptainTwig lurking. Level 4 still for both Cozy and VaporishCoast. Now ticking over to level 5. Cxnnahh, because of that first blood, falling a bit behind, was just level 3 a moment ago, hits level 4. A momentary ult advantage, albeit you're not too worried about the Athena, over in the duo lane.
I mean, the issue with Athena is not what she does in the duo, it's where
right.
she goes from the duo, and it's anywhere you so choose. The ability to catch out Variety after Lord of the Afterlife is used, or the ability to catch out Twig after the Grand Joust. You gotta realize any fight that doesn't happen where Athena is doesn't mean she won't be there. She will always be there. It's always a numbers advantage for the Highland Ravens, so long as the engagement happens anywhere. Cozyx isn't.
BigManTingz, we've talked plenty about Yu Huang, levels 1 through 3, very, very strong for that pick. Allow Angry to get out of the laning phase, unscathed, and it's happened. But when BigManTingz kind of dials in on these types of picks, he's about a half level ahead of Angry right now. Discordia, Book of Thoth, you're going to start to spool up for BMT out of the mid lane, Myth. Adapting could consider that an option, but opportunities for BigManTingz to get out of ganks. Instead, it's Variety. Remember, there can be an Athena ult here, if need be. Variety still has his ult as well, and just simply not enough damage. Kana holds on to his ult. Cozy uses theirs. But Variety effectively didn't lose much.
Yeah, doesn't lose more HP than his opponent, Kana, just did as well. I mean, this is not the standard pace to a Hades solo lane. Generally, it's run it down, play with your pressure, teleport pickup pretty standard for Hades. Instead, it's the beads this time around as well. Means he won't be able to rotate into these lanes. So every time Variety pokes him out, it's valuable, and it's already stacked up. Is it 2 levels in a solo?
I want this. I want to see this. Genetics is going to make it a 2 versus 1. VaporishCoast sends out the ult. That'll stun Yark, and it looks like for now, just enough to get the Ishtar away. That would have been unfair. I am dying to see Yark and Coast go 1 against 1 with one another, but this time it was Genetics right on time on the rotation in.
And so far, it's been Genetics on the rotation more often. Cozy's been in mid. He's been going over towards the soul lane. That's left Jarcorrr in a position where he's just falling slowly behind in experience and gold as well. That means when the 1v1 does happen, Cozy has got an advantage.
Worth noting, Adapting, who picked up first blood, about a half level behind of CaptainTwig, who has done a fantastic job of farming up on this Lancelot. And Twig finding his footing here this weekend, pivotal for the Camelot Kings in their run. We talked about Yark in game 1. CaptainTwig, such a veteran of the world stage, and a vocal leader for this Camelot Kings team. The Hebo, slightly strange, but in a good way pick for the Camelot Kings in game 1, now back to something a bit more tried and true on the Lancelot.
And the Lancelot's one that can get aggressive very early on. Already power spiking pretty hard. I mean, you can go towards Angry, the ability to force out that Celestial Flight pretty high, even rotations towards Hades could be costly. CaptainTwig's got pick of the litter, because when you take into account the direct jungle matchup, it just favors the Lancelot. Every time Grand Joust is used and Adapting is there, he loses half his kit. Unchained, brutalized, both abilities just stifled by that cripple. I wouldn't be too surprised if we often see the initiation or the engagement go Grand Joust, immediate answer Ragnarok. Just try and pick him up or displace yourself. It's a tough pick for Adapting to lock into.
Now Adapting has looked towards Variety once. He's going to be behind CaptainTwig here. Taunt from Cozy brings Twig back forward. But I don't think Angry too interested in the fighting that was going on. You still have a Fenrir lurking way behind your team right now if you're the Kings, but it looks like farm steal, all that's on the mind of Adapting. Twig will send the horse forward, nothing there. Instead of jungle 1v1 breaks open, but remember Cozy can be here, Grand Joust away. But I don't think the dash taunt will be in time. Variety, Kana, they're brawling out over in solo as well. Pillars of Agony already used. Lord of the Afterlife down as well.
He's in trouble.
Onto the Osiris, and the Highland Ravens get their second. Genetics left in lane, and he will be there alone. Another one for the SEC squad.
Variety must have missed the call. That fight happens for so long in the jungle. You gotta realize the Highland Ravens are on the way in. Well-timed fear from Kana, immediately into the taunt. Just makes it so difficult. Now in mid, Tingz forced to use the beads as well. But this is the issue we had seen in game 1. What do you do afterward? Invade a red? That's pretty good.
Twig chased off his red. However,
he's low.
This would be numbers equity now. The Camelot Kings group up. All Apple onto Cozy. VaporishCoast, he trades out 1-for-1. But Angry loses his life. Snipes from Yark. That'll tickle Cozy a bit. Lord of the Afterlife through. And Variety. Reparations for the solo lane. Osiris answers back.
Tarnish the 1v1. Variety will make you pay elsewhere. A phenomenal rotation. That teleport, finding some value early. But what can the Camelot Kings do now off the back of their team fight win?
Coast. Spot Genetics around the corner. He'll get out safely from this one. For now. But how about Coast and that mentality? A fight happens over in mid. He sends himself right over to purple buff, trying to steal it away from Yark, one of the best AD carries we've got in the league. And how about it, Myth? A 1-level lead for VaporishCoast on the Ishtar. Head above water so far in game 2.
Yeah, he's been nursing this lead for the entirety of this match so far. Jarcorrr certainly not happy about it. If I know anything about this guy, he wants to look good, and he wants to look good on the world stage. And I think in his mind, the definition of good, it's a solo kill.
Did you see him after game 1? The cameras were on him, ice cold.
Dude,
Stood
he's
up.
a killer.
That's right, he is. And we talked to him during the SWC group stages, the Pick'em show. You know, complete confidence. I don't care who we play against. I'm going to make myself look good, make them look silly. That's the type of player that Jarcorrr tries to be. Again, held his own in this lane as well. Coast just so aggressive. And that's where the Highland Ravens put a bit of their pressure early. Since then, have fought over on right, over on left. But we're starting to raise similar questions here, Myth. You know, game 1, a similar pace. Highland Ravens off to a nice early start. But come objective time, the Kings were simply better. And we talked about timing of fights. But timing of objectives now may be looked at for the Kings. Not a double AD carry composition anymore. You got the Discordia, you got Shred from Yark. Is the timing of objectives a bit shifted here in game 2?
Yeah, we're looking at a much more standard SMITE game pace. 15-minute Gold Furies, 20-minute Fire Giants. You don't have the same burn that the Camelot Kings did previously. I mean, a pick will lead to an objective regardless, so the Kings can find that on the map. Would be nice for them, but when you talk about picks, it's the Highland Ravens who've got the potential.
Wow.
Kings don't care.
This is a statement. First objective of the game. It's pulled by the Highland Ravens and secured by the Camelot Kings, is what I said the first time, I promise. The Kings, they find their way to the Pyro, and they grab it for themselves. Looking towards Gold Fury, considering it. There is a decent grouping here, Myth. So, Kings from Pyro immediately, maybe, to the Gold Fury. They'd love a pick onto adapting. His leap is down. And now Variety and Genetics in behind the Fenrir.
Good grab.
Who will gobble up CaptainTwig. This has got to be heavily on coast. Double stun from the Ishtar, but BigManTingz on his rotation from mid shuts him down.
It's a pull-in. Cozyx, you're locked down. How do you get out of this one? In a body bag. Sent back to base by BigManTingz. Double kill. Highland Ravens. Where is the response? Kana can't make the rotation, still doesn't have the teleport.
What does Angry still have? Celestial Flight's the answer. It's enough this time. Kings done playing around. They drop a couple kills on left, and now it's right to the Gold Fury. So first 2 objectives of game number 2 to the Camelot Kings. That'll build up that gold lead.
Gold Fury's going slow. Coast
is here.
Could keep it interesting.
Coast, nah, he's not gonna be in range. Kings do get the Gold Fury despite a bit of pressure from VaporishCoast. Any other world, I'm seeing Coast dashing in here, trying to fight with Genetics, but we're at Worlds, and he's going to take a breather. A reset moment for the Camelot Kings. Both objectives on the map, a couple of kills, and the first gold lead of the game.
BigManTingz accosted a bit in mid, loses out on his beads. You know, I think the Camelot Kings start that massive rotation over towards left, assuming the Ravens would be on gold in response to the Pyromancer. Instead, it's egg on their face. They're not on the Gold Fury. The fight also goes to the Kings. Why would the Ravens expect a 4-man gank in the duo lane? And an immediate turnaround in the entirety of the map. But again, the Ravens have played very well throughout the early, very similar to game 1, in that even with all these fights going to the Kings, the objectives as well, Golden Experience largely equalized still. It's not a massive separation. Difference mainly in itemization. I really like the build that Angry has gone for. Just immediately going to that penetration from Charon's coin should help out with the front line. Variety could make it pretty difficult to operate if you're Yu Huang. Get that penetration, all of a sudden it's a little bit more difficult to be Variety.
Myth, I gotta call it out while it's the case here. Yark might catch up on this wave, but it's a 2-level lead that's been built up now for VaporishCoast. The Ishtar has just hung out on the edges of these fights, picked up the farm, not died off in lane. Might starting to be snowballing towards a fun battle later on in this game. Purple buff fought over, no real rotations in from either team. Coast has just got the advantage on the left side of the map, but Genetics will rotate left as Adapting rotates right. Variety pulled through, but a Lord of the Afterlife might be caught out here. Beads perfectly timed. Ragnarok is there as well. Variety dropped by Kana. CaptainTwig, he's used his ult. What else does he have? Enough help for the moment, and a 2-kill swing for the Highland Ravens.
A massive blunder from the Camelot Kings jungler. If that ultimate just connects, or even if he aims it towards the lane, Adapting can't play. Into the wall was the only way you couldn't do it, and the Highland Ravens make a pay.
Uh-oh, now it's BigManTingz under pressure. Kana's here as well. He's got the fear. And he's got Cozy ulting over to the right side of the map. Island pull, it's a double from Genetics, a double stun, a double strife, all of it for the Camelot Kings. BigManTingz, he's made miracles happen all game long, and one more over on right.
The chase is still going, Adapting locked down, BigManTingz with the double. The Camelot Kings, even in a mistake, can make the best of a poor situation, and potentially more. Kana, have you overstayed? No, he's got to be out. Clean play. Highland Ravens a bit of an overstay there, pulled into the tier 2 tower. Never ideal, but I think they had done enough. The
I want it.
What can you do?
I want it. It's Coast, it's Yark.
He wants it.
And it's Coast who's got the autos. How about a brawl over a duo? VaporishCoast
Coast awaits out the Aegis. The stun, the autos. Coast does it. Coast the kid. What are you doing? He says. Highland Ravens, they get themselves another.
That's a massive mental blow. Maybe not much on map, being a 1-for-1 trade in roll, but if you're Jarcorrr, can't feel good.
My goodness, we're fighting again. And it's an ult, it's a Pillars of Agony out of Cxnnahh, genetics. But BigManTingz, he's not doing any better. No. Oh, the Highland Ravens, they lose just another. And there's no rotations in the backside. Cozy does not have ultimate. BigManTingz, a rampage. It was under threat, but he gets away.
These power spikes from Cxnnahh really starting to line up. That Bancrofts turns around that fight. The lifesteal just really messes up the mental arithmetic, I think. Looked like BigManTingz thought he had the burst. You just don't. That's what Hades does. That lifesteal, the sustain and kit makes it so difficult to lock him down. And now with Polynomicon as well, he's got the burst.
And if we're building up here to something special in game number 2, it was this pivot point, though, the second real rotation of objectives where
dangerous.
the Camelot Kings started things off. That's a nice strike from BigManTingz. This Discordia, it's had the passive effectively all game long as a 5-0 disco for the Camelot Kings has made so much of a difference. Can the Ravens find the pressure, though? How hard is this Discordia to dive?
I mean, it's difficult because of the nature of the dive. It's got to be Athena taunt to start the fight, or maybe Fenrir goes in on their own, but the peel of the Camelot Kings so uniquely suited to deal with the Fenrir. Hades being largely squishy, only a tank once he's channeling that ultimate, means that he has a hard time closing gap as well. If Tingz plays safe, he might be the last one in, last one out.
Regardless of what happens here in game 2, cannot say that the Highland Ravens did not show up. They are swinging with the Camelot Kings here. Things equal in both of the games, and objectives have made the difference. And it might again here. So once again, now the Ravens were doing this a lot in game 1. They were pulling the Pyro, dropping it when the Kings rotated to right. But the Kings this time, they are here while it starts. Adapting will leap away.
Here's
Genetics, potential hook is Cozy just left alone a bit, but a Pillars of Agony from Cxnnahh. It's Bravo of the peel, will not get out with the Athena ult. Oh, and Cozy might trade his life for it as well. A jump in from Variety.
He's still going.
The Osiris has arrived. A Twig kill as well. And now the Camelot Kings rolling in mid.
VaporishCoast stands his own. The King rotates in. CaptainTwig down. That's one in exchange with the Camelot Kings. They come out clean. It's that rotation in. Variety with the flank, cuts off 3. The Highland Ravens wanted to reset the Pyro, but you retreat into a fed Osiris. Man. It's not easy.
Variety, now he has made his presence known over in the mid lane. Pyro to the Camelot Kings. Potentially done playing around here, Myth. When the objective burn starts to build up, that's when the Kings really get going. But the Ravens, my goodness, they have dove in time and time again to save one another's lives. The camaraderie is admirable. Can they fight back in around a Primal Fury, around a Fire Giant?
I think so. The game's still incredibly tight here. VaporishCoast might be the difference maker. If he can rotate into some of these fights, get involved from the offset, this Ishtar is just rolling with damage. 2, 1, and 2 for the Penta Kid. Already has the Shadow Steel to deal with some of the sustain, and he's looking for Jarcorrr again.
Oh, VaporishCoast, this would be a statement. My goodness, Jark has to roll
4
away.
levels down.
4 levels down to VaporishCoast. He's got to call in the cavalry, and Variety will put his pressure onto VaporishCoast. A statement has been made, regardless of the outcome. VaporishCoast, so talented. And Myth, I got to imagine in the head of the Kings a bit.
I mean, how could he not be? He's 4 levels up, Dave. I'm not taking a 1v1. Who's taking a fight up against Vaporish? Nobody. It's going to take at least 2.
We're going to have to find out. We're going to have to find out, Myth, because now the Primal Fury is the objective for the Kings. And the Primal Fury goes to the Kings, but angry. He's gone massive. Cozy again, though, will not get out of the fight. VaporishCoast, he's got the chase down for CaptainTwig, who'll be able to leap away. Oh, where did Adapting come from? Out of the back line is the King, and the Fenrir will give up the chase.
It's a 1-for-1, but Athena's got global presence on respawn. If the Highland Ravens want, they might be able to push in towards Fire Giant here. It's a fast rotation. Right. Kings, they're on their heels.
You're right. Now is your time, Highland Ravens. Extend your advantage as Genetics will try to peel out for the rest of the team. He will. And it's not immediately to FG. The snipes from Jark were close, but not enough. And it looks like the Highland Ravens happy with the tier 1 tower in mid.
Good damage return from the Camelot Kings does prevent that fire. If Athena's allowed to ult in, I mean, there's no way the Kings could have stepped up to defend, not with all their resources already expended. The Highland Ravens have certainly come to play, and 20 minutes in, it is anybody's game. For now, I'm keeping my eyes on Objective Burn, and the ADC that is now 3 levels up has probably got a bit more of it, I'd say. Lots of damage potential from the Shadow Steel. Front line will melt thanks to that kin size, but it's the Camelot Kings who are showing presence around the fire. I'm not certain they're in a position where they could just pull it. Maybe picks? You could look to try and dive onto Angry or return kills onto Cozyx. 1 and 5 on the Athena has been struggling on these initiations. The counter initiation from the Kings has been clean. I think that might be your way in. If the Kings can generate pressure around fire, force the Ravens to respond, and just deal with the front line, might make it a bit easier.
We're even, Myth, at the 22-minute mark, when the team's very close map state. And you know what that means for me? You know what Fire Giant dances mean for me?
You sweating?
I'm scared.
Okay.
That's exactly what it means. The Highland Ravens, my goodness, what a statement they've made in game number 2. VaporishCoast has hit level 20, so now it's XP catch-up time for Jarcorrr. He'll start to build that, close that gap rather, just down the 3 levels. Getting Coast involved,
he sold his
the name of the game, because Coast has been fighting in 1v1, and then the fight happens around him. Getting him more involved in the team fight's important.
Yeah, Yark sells his starter here, finishes up the kin size. It'll help out with the front line, but I wonder how that adjusts his build going forward. That tells me that the Camelot Kings think this next team fight is all important. You lose this one, you lose the fire, your base defense maybe looks a bit shaky. Jarcorrr needed the power spike, and he needed it now. So, itemization difference, Highland Ravens favored still in ADC, but maybe not as much as previously.
World's life on the line for the Highland Ravens. BigManTingz, a 7-0-2 Discordia game to push the Camelot Kings forward, and we're fighting right away. We're not dancing at all. Taunts through from Cozy.
They
It's
got
a double
him.
roots as well. Cozy, he'll get out this time.
Yark?
Kana's gotten the kill, but CaptainTwig will chase down the support. Island pull on just adapting. BigManTingz was caught in place. You need this kill if you're the Ravens. You gotta kill off the Discordia. Kana brawling out, gets him. Double kill for the Hades.
Adapting, wants to find one more. Genetics, just one bit of damage.
We got the
finish him off.
brutalize. We got him, and it's the Highland Ravens. 3 for 1. You lose your support, but adapting, not satisfied, will have to be. And here come the Ravens.
The Highland Ravens, where do you go? Is it tier 2?
Yeah,
is it
taunting
taunting on tower from the King? Fire Giant could be pulled here. Coast in first. Angry, maybe your tank in this situation. But keep your eyes on the
He's
Kings.
TPing in. It's Variety.
He can stop
Variety
him.
teleporting in. We have not seen a Fire Giant steal yet, but we've seen 4 FG attempts. For now, the Highland Ravens in commanding position around the Fire Giant, but they will drop it. They will back up, and it looks like they will take the Pyro. They will, but no FG for the SEC.
Could you believe how alone BigManTingz was? How alone Variety is? Cut out, ult out.
But are the Ravens being taunted in because the respawn's starting to roll through?
He's done.
No! It's a killing spree. It's another. It's a 5-1 Hades for the Ravens.
Fire Giant pulled. They got a much better shot at it this time. Camelot Kings can show up, but Twig in first. That's dangerous.
Oh my God! 1 by 1, the Camelot Kings waltzing into the FG, and 1 by 1 they will die. Yark steps up big on the snipes. Needed to happen, and the health bars they remain low. But Angry looking for a push, won't get it. And the Ravens satisfied with 2.
That's got to be the disengage. Unless BigManTingz has something to say. Ultimate just off the mark. Can the Ravens get out of this situation? They're so low.
Oh, but Genetics wants more. Gets a stun
Good
and a
pull.
pull onto Angry. Cozy's going to be over here as well. And we will take a deep breath on a 2 for 1 for the Highland Ravens. Coast finally taken down in these fights. In Myth, it's BigManTingz, the 7-0 shutdown given to the Ravens.
BigManTingz needs help in these fights. If you let Kana take the 1v1 up against them, or if Cozyx can close gap, or if Adapting's costing him, you need the peel from the Camelot Kings. The reason the first fight around fire goes so poor is because of how split up it was. The Highland Ravens essentially manufacture 2v2s and 1v1s in the jungle, and the Ravens, having VaporishCoast as ahead as he is, will win those situations. If the Kings want to fight, it's got to be S5, and it's got to be around BMT. If you're not playing around him, you're simply not playing around your strongest player.
How do you think I'm feeling right now?
Nervous? Scared?
Scared's the word we're
sweaty,
looking for.
maybe?
We've arrived. We officially have arrived at Scared, and we're 1 game into Worlds. The Camelot Kings expected to 2-0 this set and move on. still have a chance to do so. So clean, even when behind around objectives. We've talked to the Kings plenty over the year here in Season 9. You know, you fall behind, but you find a way back into these games. How do you do it? And they constantly tell us, even when behind, they are used to teams overextending, doing too much. And so, if the Highland Ravens let all of this wind push them too far forward, you better believe the Camelot Kings will have an answer.
The Ravens and the EU SEC as a whole do not have an issue with overstaying generally. They are very, very clean with the lead, and the Ravens have finally solidly got it in their coffers. Approaching the fire giant.
Oh, God.
Defense from both sides.
No.
Neither one can just do it. It's got to be a fight first.
The Ravens are trying. They're trying. They're going to maybe bait in the Camelot Kings here. Look, Khepri is around the backside of the wall. We've talked a lot about BigManTingz. This Hades has suddenly erupted into the game here in Game 2. He has 5-1-4. He's got Book of the Dead online as well. It's going to be so hard to kill off Khepri. And how about Adapting, who has somehow turned his game around at 5-2-5 on the Fenrir. As Cozy will dash forward, he'll find the first taunt. Watch out for the strikes from BigManTingz. Those have initiated so often here for the Kings.
The Ravens have been pushed back pretty significantly, the Kings. No wards on pocket, so vision, as it stands, will remain. But the ability to pull a fire giant isn't there. Push a tower? You could do that.
Which team has the lead here, though? Because the Kings stepping forward. It's Jarcorrr rolling away. Now maybe the Highland Ravens feel like they've got a chance to fight. Genetics will swing away. BigManTingz, he's got both of his actives. Jarcorrr lost his beads, still has the snipes.
TKO on the duo lane of the Camelot Kings, but the Highland Ravens will not take this time to push forward, instead reset themselves, and the dance continues. Keep your eyes on all the relics. As of now, it's the Camelot Kings at disadvantage. Beads generally available for everyone on the Ravens. Create some opportunities to start pushing forward. Adapting in particular could really change this entire fight if he just connects with Jarcorrr. If that Ragnarok picks up this Rom, I mean, that could very well be GG.
This has been an absolute brawl between the Highland Ravens and the Camelot Kings. Variety so tanky, he'll get taunted in, lose half of his HP. Does have teleport, so should the Camelot Kings want to reset their solo laner, which it looks like they will, TBD on if he'll actually teleport back in, which he also will. So if you're getting another initiation, some more poke like that onto Variety, these taunts have been so impactful from Cozy. Can you push back the Osiris once more? Give yourselves an opening.
As of now, it's Genetics in first. Gotta keep eyes on Adapting. He's going to be the menace in this team fight. The Camelot Kings do well to sniff him out, hovering on that left-hand side. The Highland Ravens playing slow. Generally, it's the Kings forcing their opposition to play exactly like this. A taste of their own medicine, and it's looking good for the Chaos side. But Fire Giant, we haven't seen any headway there. A catch out onto Adapting could be big, but I'm not certain that Twig wins this 1v1 anymore. Seething Howl for the Fenrir, just giving you so much power and lifesteal.
Wow. Hard. The Highland Ravens pull out the FG, but Adapting's going to be last to this fight. You're going to see a Lancelot before you're going to see a Fenrir. Pillars of Agony. It's up from Khepri. Cozy back through as well.
That's massive.
Oh, it's crazy. Genetics with 3 on the pull. Khepri, no life left. A jump in from Variety. VaporishCoast being run down onto the back line. Adapting's got a lot to do against a lot of Camelot Kings because there's no kills traded out.
CaptainTwig locked down, but it doesn't stop Jarcorrr from shutting down Cozyx. Now it's angry and Adapting. The only one standing. How'd you get here?
I don't know. He walked back in. One more auto. No. And Adapting. He will get out this time. Variety was looking for the fadeaway. Won't get it. And the Camelot Kings back in the game.
They've got so much time on this. This Fire Giant, a foregone conclusion. 30 seconds on nearest respawn. Pyro first, pull the fire. And if the Highland Ravens show up, catch a pick, and you might move into the Phoenix immediately afterward. The Kings have finally seen some headway around the actual largest neutral objective, the Fire Giant. And it's again, Adapting, trying his hardest to rotate around the entirety of that team fight, spends so much time jockeying for position, loses the thread, and the Camelot Kings say, sure, be behind us. We're a spearhead, move forward.
It's an EFG for the Camelot Kings right at the 30-minute mark. Their fans, the Kings fans, all their supporters may be breathing a bit easier now after what was a very difficult start to the game. Not out of the woods yet, however. The largest lead we've seen so far for the Camelot Kings. I wonder if you have to rewind, because you're looking at the Ravens. They get a 2-for-1 trade. They have the advantage. Do not immediately pull the Fire Giant. Oni Fury feels okay. Not game-changing, but feels all right from the Ravens. But it's the moment where they choose not to pull the Fire Giant and fight against the Kings instead.
I think so. It's just
maybe you're scared of the steal potential. I think that definitely weighs heavily on your mind. The ability for Discordia or even a Rom to take away that objective just makes it so difficult to just say, hey, okay, we'll pull fire. Sure, we picked one. So instead, taking the safer path, I think the correct decision from the Ravens, it's just execution in the team fight that cost them. Fortunately for the Ravens, Oni Fury Waves should keep those minion waves pushed up, given the opportunity, at least in the soul lane. Otherwise, I mean, mid, Variety's got that one locked down. Duo, that's the rest of them.
The Ravens find a pick, though. So many of these Athena taunts have been so threatening, right? And setting up for a lot of poke damage, but so many of them onto Variety. This is quick from the Camelot Kings. Maybe one more chance from the Highland Ravens here at Worlds. CaptainTwig, he's found Coast. It's a perfect early target. Book of the Dead. Hold on. It helped. Adapting on Brutalized. Oh my gosh. Oh, it's Cozy. But there needs to be more. It's got to be Angry. It's got to be adapting. Unbelievable defense from the Ravens.
The Kings try and blitz the Phoenix, and the Ravens move in just as quick. 3 Fire Giants off the map. And it's just Variety and Twig who could only watch on from a distance. All of that fight facilitated by one player, and it's Cxnnahh out of the soul lane. This Hades just comes up massive there. The ultimate forced everything, and the Camelot Kings had to play responsively. Tough stuff. That's your entire siege lost. We're looking at another fire dance.
I was scared before, Miff. What is it, Terrified is up next, I guess. We're getting there. This Highland Ravens team just does not have quit. They do not give up easily. I don't think they give up at all. And what a fight, especially when you lose Coast immediately. Your initiation, Miff, I imagine, has to be perfect from that point on to have a chance in that fight.
Fenrir's target selection, adapting rather. Cozyx catching out Jarcorr's dash with the taunt. The multi-man ultimate from the Hades. Sure, you got Ishtar, but multiple threats on the Highland Ravens now, and that burst potential, this Hades really starting to spool up. Book of the Dead finds massive value. We had thought maybe that Osiris ultimate from Variety would stop the survivability of Cxnnahh. You can't lifesteal if you've been hit by that. Don't need it when you've got a secondary HP bar in the wings. But what is this?
Whoa.
The Highland Ravens.
Well, Fire Giant.
Where are they going?
Still another couple minutes on the respawn. They're going to walk around the Oracles. We'll take a deep breath, looks like, stealing away, just looking for a member of the Camelot Kings. Caught out on the left side of the map.
They got this tier 2 for sure.
Right. Don't imagine you can go much further. The Camelot Kings will also shove down the right side. Backs being channeled from the Camelot Kings, but only a couple. And it might be a Phoenix Siege here from the Highland Ravens. No Fire Giant needed.
Oh,
How fast?
They got it?
How fast can they burn it? How fast can they do it? Fast enough, and it's only Twig and Variety who are back. And it's the left side Phoenix. Oh my God, they're going in. But CaptainTwig, he's used the beads, and it should be enough to get away.
So dangerous.
What
the
a
Twig
call.
dies there. That's the Titan.
What
but
a call.
Is it responded to on the opposite side? Phoenix in right. Should go to the Camelot Kings, but which is more valuable?
Who's happier? Who's happier?
It's absolutely the Ravens. You've got a much easier time defending the right than the left around the Fire Giant. We're about a minute out from seeing how this one pans out. But the Highland Ravens, from the brink, the wherewithal to make that call, to stealthily maneuver through the jungle, that is insane. Adapting, surely spearheading that one.
If that's me, I'm accidentally stepping right on the edge of the Oracle vision there.
If that's me, I'm not at this tournament, so.
What do you mean? That's a great call. They made the right
I've
call.
gotten owned. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not making it all the way here.
I don't know if your mental hangs in there well enough in a game like this to suddenly make a call like that. You brought yourself into it. That's not on me. Highland Ravens, though, Myth. There's so much now riding behind this. The Camelot Kings have built up a hefty enough gold lead.
Are they doing it again?
They might, but this time they're looking for blood. They're looking for kills. They're looking for Variety. Variety's lost his beads. Also has a Mantle of Discord. Ravens will group up behind the Fire Giant pit, and it looks like we'll reset. Small value from each of the last rotations. Big value in the Phoenix. Also decent value in the beads.
But look how far up that minion wave is pushed on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
No response from the Camelot Kings. It can work its way into the Titan room. A tanky Titan with 2 tier 2s still standing, but certainly not something the Camelot Kings would love to have to deal with.
Pyro's helpful here.
Could send Variety back. He could TP in. Pyro giving you movement speed, of course. Could help out a bit as well.
We go again. One more, at least, Fire Giant dance between the Kings and the Ravens. You're going to send Variety back. He's got teleport. It's an immediate pull.
Soon.
It's an immediate pull from the Highland Ravens. Are you testing the response time? Are you taunting in genetics? Whoa, that's big chunk from CaptainTwig.
Oh,
Genetics has done it again. The snipes from Yark on the follow-up. Adapting, he's found Twig, and he's unstoppable. But on the left side of the fight, the Kings looking good. Angry, Coast, they're backpedaling.
Look at variety.
Cxnnahh, he's also got it. And the Highland Ravens, they get 2 for 3.
Jarcorrr, last man standing alone here, tries to return some damage.
Oh,
Can the Ravens take it? Jarcorr's got him.
It's just Tings, it's just Yark. And oh my God, it's both mids, it's a solo. It's an AD carry on a knife's edge here in game number 2. Adapting time and time again has made the plays. But the target selection myth has been so good from the Kings. They've killed off Coast immediately in the last few fights.
Then you take out Coast, you take out the potential for the Fire Giant. Maybe Adapting could do it if even one more survived, but the Highland Ravens can't get much from here. Jarcorrr surviving to the end of that fight, phenomenal. BigManTingz positioning, perfect. But again, I have to highlight the man on your screen right now. Cxnnahh has been absolutely dominating. This Hades has done too much. He's surviving, he's initiating, he's dealing the damage, he's climbing the DPS charts at the top now. You gotta find an answer, but it's this Book of the Dead that really is shaking up the Camelot Kings. We've seen Variety multiple times connect his ultimate, say, all right guys, sink your damage here, he's no longer healing. Like, well, I can't burn 2 whole HP bars, and Cxnnah's just anime villain laughing.
It's only the supports who have not completed their itemization. It is Adapting who refuses to drop out of this world quietly. And it's the Camelot Kings myth. This has been a very vocal team with one another. I think regardless of how game number 2 goes here, it's a team that will have some conversations. The Ravens have been aggressive on pulling this Fire Giant early. Beads are back up for Variety. Both relics down for Yark and both down for VaporishCoast. These AD carries, their safety, their positioning, primary importance. But it's CaptainTwig
He's going
who wants
big.
to fight. Adapting's not going to get a chance. CaptainTwig's got the burn. Caught on the Book of the Dead. Might be the next to fall. A killing spree for Yark, and the Kings looking good.
Cozyx caught out alone here. No access to ultimate, can only buy time for the rest of his team to respawn. It's 5 alive from the Camelot Kings. Who needs fire? That Phoenix is already weak.
Angry and VaporishCoast. They've got it all to do. It's both carries, and the health bar's full for the Camelot Kings. Neither have their ultimate, but Angry, yes he does. He's got his ult to start off. He's pulled back in by Genetics, and now VaporishCoast. I'm not sure there's enough magic left in the game. The Highland Ravens, they have fought valiantly, but the Camelot Kings, eyes on the semifinals. They've turned the game around, and the Camelot Kings burn down the Titan, and they're going to the semifinals.
Such a dangerous quarter here. Sure, they come out clean on the other side, a 2-0 on the bracket, but still the Highland Ravens at every step of the way showing fight back. But it is an emphatic end to this game where the Camelot Kings simply barrel over the Ravens.
I think, talk about turnarounds in that game. You're looking at Jarcorrr. We saying he got diffed early in that game? VaporishCoast was going crazy. Yark ends that game 6-3 and 11. Heck of a turnaround from that ROM. BigManTingz, absurd on the Discordia. It was great carry play, but also
talk about Genetics, please.
I have to talk. I'm talking about Genetics.
Okay.
I got to talk about the other 2. Genetics on the landfalls time and time again.
He hit 4 3-man ultimates, and still somehow in those team fights only found a win in 2 of them. He was coming up massive for his team. The Maui play, clinical from Genetics out of support. But top to bottom, it's the Camelot Kings. And even in the last team fight, we haven't talked about Twig just yet.
No.
He soloed the king. He soloed the king in enemy territory.
And it was necessary because Adapting was wrecking the previous team fights.
He was.
The Fenrir was finding the backline with ease. So the target selection from the Kings at the end there, about as good as it gets. The Highland Ravens, look, this is a team that's got to, I think, leave heads held high because game 1, it gets away from you a bit on the objectives, but game number 2 here, you had a real good look at it. Camelot Kings, they survive a bit of a scare, and the Camelot Kings move into the semifinals. That's it for Myth and I on the desk. Take it away.
That's right, it's a 2-0 victory for the Kings, although not as close, or sorry, not as far a gap between the two as maybe they would have liked coming into this. The Ravens there in game number 2 absolutely blew me away. It's very difficult when you see a team that 2-0'd and you want nothing more than to talk about the other guys on the other side. And I think we have to do that here because, the Kings, they look great.
Yeah.
But they come in and they do the expected performance. If you're looking at the Ravens there, they gave them a hard time. I got to see Biggie for a second after game number 1. I asked him, how you feeling? He said, a lot cleaner than we thought they were going to be. And I think that's really what it is. I think that disappointed, yes, but the Ravens should still hold their heads high, because if you think about it, this is a team that no one even expected Hazer to get here, let alone to have that performance against the kings of all teams. That was a phenomenal game number 2.
Yeah, really, really impressive. I mean, they've gone home 2-0, but wow, did they give us a showing. That last game there, Connor on the Hades.
Ooh,
my
yeah.
goodness,
Oh my
what a performance by him. Cozy stepped into the support role like 6 months ago or so, and now he's doing it on the world stage. What a performance by all of them, and I hope the crowd will support them in going home, but putting on a great show.
It's great work. The KDAs don't lie. 8-4-6 there for adapting. 7-4-7. The 12 assists picked up there for Cozy. Really, really well played, to the point where Coast for a long time, I mean, he had 4 levels up on hardcore at one point in this game. And if I'm thinking towards Season 10, which at this point for the Ravens, they can maybe start workshopping some things, you got to be thinking Coast is in a lot of talks as of right now. That performance is going to win you a lot. But if you're looking at the championship right now, then you are talking Kings, and you are still looking no further than the plays made through. I mean, Kings alone this game was phenomenal, Charlie.
I just gotta say, I mean, I've had plenty of my own SMITE games where I was Jarcorrr in this situation, where I am getting absolutely dumpstered, and there's no coming back from that. The fact that he got to a point after a play like this, where he was able to dash in 1v3 and win, is absurd. He was so far behind, but making huge plays. Cxnnahh, for example, the landfalls, we have to consider how demoralizing that is for the Highland Ravens. They had the lead, they had the team fight, they had great stops like this, and then for Maui just to completely shut down their team fight. It is not easy to come back. Like I said, Yark making plays like this from so far behind, double relics up, 1v3, his team is losing this fight handedly, and he says, no worries, guys, I got this. That is not an easy thing to be able to do.
The snipes we got to see as well. I mean, there were a lot of moments where it didn't feel like things were going to be clean for him. Still, damage from far away gave him a lot of effort. And so not only a massive turnaround for him, but also, and they said it on the cast, you just mentioned it now, but Cxnnahh just, we talk about him, we talk about his mechanics all the time.
Yep.
And yet, this time around, it was absolutely insane what he was able to do on the map. I'm sure, again, somewhere, Aggro was happy and probably screaming, that's how you do it. And he got to see his god playing at that level. How many times, I mean, Mifflin even highlighted it, getting 3-4-man pulls.
Yep.
Still somehow only winning half of the fights that you managed to do that in. It was just phenomenal to be able to watch. And you don't got to take it from me. We've got Cxnnahh standing by with Kelly on the stage.
Thank you so much, Gormizer. Guys, give it up for Cxnnahh right here. I feel like regardless of how your early game starts, if your objectives are stolen, if you guys get double killed, your team is always able to convert to a successful end game. What is the key to that success?
I think it comes down to shot calling. I'm a big shot caller, so is Jarcorrr. That's the reason we picked him up. I'm very hot, he's very cold. I'll make wild calls, he'll calm me down, and it kind of comes to a point where we're just making good calls.
Well, that goes into my next question. In game number 2, there was just so much action, so many plays being made. Do you feel like there was a standout star of your team, or was it just everyone together?
Yeah, me. I got about 4 triple Maui ults. I smashed them.
And you are going to be going up against the winner of Bolts versus Mambo tomorrow. Who do you think you're going to be facing?
I'd like to play the Bolts, but I think I'm going to be playing Mambo for sure.
All right, interesting prediction right there. Cxnnahh, thank you so much, guys. Make some more noise for him right here. And we're going to head back on to the desk.
It's another congratulations, 2-0 for the Kings. Wants to play the Bolts, expects to play Mambo. We're going to find out pretty soon who they will be tackling, although there is a little bit more before we jump into that. In fact, we're going to kick it to a break. When we get back from that break, though, we've got the hi-rez Presents. If you've been wondering what's going to be going on in Season 10, then you're going to want to make sure you stay tuned, because a lot of reveals are about to come up. I saw them yesterday. They are spicy. So make sure you stay tuned. We're going to kick it to a quick break, and then we'll be right back.